Good afternoon. Welcome to the Ordinary Council meeting on the 24th of June 2021. The meeting is starting at 1 p.m. I'll now call for attendance. I have myself, Councillor Ireland, Councillor Tully, Councillor Johnnick, Councillor Fechner, Councillor Milligan, and if I could get a hello from Councillor Kunzman who's dialed in. Councillor Kunzman, are you on the line? I'll move on at this stage and note that she is not online. In the meantime, I am expecting to come online, so I will move a motion for Councillor Kunzelman has requested attendance via an audio link in line with section 254K of the Local Government Regulations and 8.62 of Council's Meeting Procedures Policy. A councillor must attend a meeting of council in person unless a resolution is passed that the councillor be allowed to take part in the meeting by audio link. I will move that. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that. Thank you,
Councillor Fechner. Any discussion? I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And around the table, it's myself, Councillor Allen, Councillor Tully, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Fechner and Councillor Milligan. I said yes. So when she does come on, she can come in. We'll now move on to the acknowledgement of country. And may I ask you, Councillor Fechner?
Of course, yes.
Thank you so much.
Ipswich City Council respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners as custodians of the land and waters we share. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, as the keepers of the traditions, customs, cultures and stories of a proud people.
Thank you, Councillor Fechner. We'll now move on to the opening prayer. Councillor Tully, would you like to do the prayer for us?
Heavenly Father, we seek you to be with us in this meeting today. Assist us to be an example to others, bringing strength and encouragement in whatever we do, and equip us for the ongoing challenges as they arise. Give us the guidance to continue to make wise decisions for both the short and long-term benefit of our city and our community, regardless however difficult and unpopular some will be. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Councillor Tully. Now we move on to apologies and leave of absence. I'll move that we have an apology for Councillor Kunzelman, noting that she hopefully will be jumping on, but also a leave of absence for Councillor Madsen and Councillor Doyle. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Fechner. Any discussion? I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And I can see it's unanimous of the people in this room. Thank you. We now move on to item 5, the condolences. There are none. I move on to item 6, tributes. There are none. I move on to item 7, and I'll hand over to Councillor Milligan. I believe he wishes to table a petition.
Thank you, Mayor. I have petition from residents of Carolee, being a petition presented to Council objecting to the location of proposed childcare centre planned for 54 to 56 Arthur Somerville Road, Carolee, relating to application number 5636 of 2021 MCU, material change of use, community use, childcare centre. In accordance with section 8.10 of Council's Meeting Procedures Policy, the only motion allowed for a petition presented is that the petition be received and referred to the appropriate department for investigation. As this petition has also been submitted as part of a formal submission under the Planning Act, the only recommendation would be that it be referred to the relevant department for investigation. And therefore I table the petition.
Thank you, Councillor Milligan. So the recommendation that the petition be received and referred to the Planning and Regulatory Services Department for investigation. I assume that you're moving that, Councillor Wiggin. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Ireland. Would anyone like, it's just a matter of that, and I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And it's unanimous, all 6 votes. Thank you very much. We move on to 8, presentations and deputations. There are none. 9, public participation. There is none. We'll now move on to 10, declarations of interest in the matters on the agenda. And I note that Councillor Madsen did put one forward, but he has a leave of absence. So we'll move on from there.
Yep.
Councillor
Mayor.
Fickner?
Yep. In accordance with Section 150 EQ of the Local Government Act of 2009, I, Councillor Andrew Fickner, inform the meeting that I have a declarable conflict of interest in item number 14.6, entitled Ipswich Central Redevelopment Committee's Report. The nature of the declarable conflict of interest is my business interests in both A1A Proprietary Limited and Bar Heisenberg Proprietary Limited, both located in the top of town of Ipswich. I plan on dealing with this matter by leaving the room while the matter is discussed and voted on.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fickner. Any other declarations of conflicts of interest? No, we'll move on to item 11, which is the confirmation of the minutes of the meeting. So I move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 27th of May 2021 be confirmed. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Mulligan. Would anyone like to speak to those minutes? No, in that case I'll put those to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And it's unanimous, all 6 votes, and carried. Item 12 is the mayoral minute. There is none. Item 13 is the business outstanding matters lying on the table to be dealt with. There are none. So we now move on to the reception and consideration of committee reports, item 14. Thank you. Pardon me. Right. I'd like to move to item 14.1, which is the Growth and Infrastructure Waste Committee report, and the recommendations that the minutes of the Growth, Infrastructure and Waste Committee report 2021-05 of the 10th of June 2021 be noted. May I have I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Fickner. Would anyone like to speak to the relevant council officer on this report? No? Any discussion? No? I'll then put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And it's unanimous, all 6 votes. Thank you. And now move on to 14.2, the Governance and Transparency Committee. The recommendation that Council adopt the recommendations of the Governance and Transparency Committee report number 2021-05 of the 10th of June 2021. I have no exceptions. Does anyone like, are there any objections to me moving them in total, or would we like to break some out? No, I'll move them all together as a batch. May I have a seconder? Oh, sorry, Councillor Tully?
Yeah, I do have a question, probably with the officers. Yeah.
Yep, sure. Which item?
2 of them. Item 5 and
Item 2 and 5, or just 5?
sorry, item 5 and item 7.
Item 5, which is the new trustee lease?
Yeah,
For the Australian crawl?
yeah, and
Yep,
number
sure.
7.
And number 7, which is the repeal of the telco? Sure. So what I'll do is we'll move items. Pardon me, I'll just double check. Items 1 through to 4 and item 6 together, and then do items 5 and 7 separately. Any other amendments to that? Wonderful. I move that items 1 through to 4 and item 6 of the Governance and Transparency Committee
That the recommendations be received.
of the recommendation be upheld. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you very much. Any discussion on items 1 to 4 and item 6? No, I'll put to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And it's unanimous, all 6 votes. I think we'll go to item 5. Would you like to will we call for the council officer? May I please call forward the relevant council officer for item 5 of the G&T?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Councillors. Jeff Keats, Acting General Manager of Corporate Services.
Thank you. Councillor Tully.
Yeah, thank you for that. I just need some clarification on what the current position is, that the recommendation is to terminate the agreement and then enter into a lease. But what's the background to this and the purpose of it, and how did this come about?
Thanks, Councillor Tully. I'll try to deal with that as best I can. Sorry, the officer's not here specifically to speak to that. From my recollection is, from the report, is that the nature of the agreement of the management is not the appropriate agreement. It's to have in place a lease versus a management agreement. So there has been discussions with the Australia Crawl in that space, and they've been informed all the way along. So it is a matter of just formality of terminating the current agreement and putting in place a lease, which is the most appropriate arrangement for that structure. So nothing more than just effectively putting in place the appropriate legal structure for that.
So there's no change in the continuity of the management arrangements?
No, nothing.
Except the legal and contractual and management arrangements?
That's correct. No change of terms or anything else like that from my recollection of the discussion as well.
Yeah.
I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tully.
Are you the right person for number 7?
Let me just play and catch up.
Sounds
with that.
like
I'll deal with the 5. We'll do it each one, if that's okay.
Come back. Thank
Yep.
you.
So I'll move for item 5. Do I have a seconder for item 5? Councillor Milligan. Thank you. I'll open up for discussion. I can hear some, pardon me, it sounds like Councillor Kunzler may be online, is that correct?
I'm on the phone.
Thank you. Now, we can hear you now. It's 1:13.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kunzler, we're up to item number, I guess we're up to the looking at the committee reports. We're up to the G&T committee reports.
Thank you.
Item 5.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
In discussion, Councillor Taylor, I can concur that I asked similar questions at the G&T on the 10th of June and received the same advice from the property manager as well. Any other discussion? No?
Sorry, Mayor, a question. Are we using a revised agenda?
No, there's no sorry, in the room, everyone but Councillor Madsen and Councillor Doyle are here. Councillor Doyle isn't on the phone either, so we're not. I didn't proceed with that notice of motion that I had emailed all the councils about previously. So we're just following the normal agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand.
Thank you. So going back to the DT item 5, I've moved it and Councillor Milligan has seconded it. If there's no other comments, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. All 6 here are voted. Councillor Kunzelman, how do you vote?
I agree.
Thank you. It's unanimous. We're now looking at item 7 of the G&T. And you'd like to speak to the relevant council officer on that too?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Mr Keach.
Thank you. Jeff Keach, Acting General Manager, Corporate Services.
Councillor Tully.
Yeah, thank you. Just need clarification, am I reading this correctly, that there was an original decision to grant a lease, which was granted?
Yes, that's
to
correct.
Vodafone?
Yes.
And now it's to repeal that decision?
That's correct. Vodafone have come. There was 2 at the time. There was 2 properties that we granted lease for. They're continuing with one. This one, they've decided that they don't want to have a tower on that one, so they don't require the lease any further in relation to that one. So it's repealing the previous decision because Vodafone have come back to us. We actually never completed that lease. It was never finalised. And so they just have come back to us and said we no longer require that property for that purpose. So we're just repealing that decision.
Thank you. So the second property must have been in some reasonable proximity to to this, that they don't need both to cover the area?
Yeah, yes, that's correct. Yeah, they don't. I don't know the specific reason as to why, but there was certainly another property that was part of the same agreement at the time when it was approved, and they're continuing with that one, but don't require this one. Yeah.
No, thank you, that's all I need.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Keach. I'll move item 7. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Ireland, thank you. Any further discussion? I'll just note that we are similar questions at the G&T as well, Councillor Tully. Put that to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And all 6 in the room have raised their hand. Councillor Kunzelman, how do you vote?
I would agree.
Thank you. So it's unanimous, all 7. Thank you. We now move on to 14.3, Community Culture, Arts and Sports Committee, and that recommendation that Council adopt the recommendations of the Community Culture, Arts and Sport Committee report, number 2021-05 of the 10th of June 2021. I'll hand over to the chair of that to see if you'd like to batch on and give an update or a highlight of that report.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. At the last round of committee meetings, there were only a couple of items which we discussed. The Ipswich City Hearts program update, so council officers just making sure they're keeping us in the loop with how that's going, and members of the community contacting them, and we spoke about a whole host of other services that we've been referring our residents to in lieu of the City Hearts cabs program, and it seems to be tracking really well for the benefit of the room here today. And we celebrated the sports and recreation programming where we held yoga for all access purposes. So that was a wonderful program that will continue into next financial year. So in summary, I would just like to adopt the recommendations of the committee as they are.
1 through to 3?
Yep.
Any objections to that? Okay. So you're moving items 1 through to 3 as a batch for the CCAS. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Milligan. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put the matters...
Marcy, yeah?
Yes, please, Councillor Kunzelman.
Marcy?
Yes.
This continues with Councillor Peckner's comments of this morning in relation to the wide range of activities of the council, and I'm very proud that we're able to support these activities.
Thank you, Councillor Kunzelman. I now put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. In the room, all 6 councillors have raised their hand. Councillor Kunzelman, how do you vote?
Absolutely.
That's a yes, and so that's unanimous, all 7. We now move on to item 14.4, the Economic and Industry Development Committee, and that recommendation is that Council adopt the recommendations of the Economic and Industry Development Committee report number 2021-05 of the 10th of June 2021. I'll hand over to the Chair to see how she would like that report handled.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just note that all items on the agenda were well discussed and supported during the committee, so I would like to move that as a batch, please.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Ireland. Open for discussion. No discussion. I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Oh, sorry, it's 6 people in the room. Councillor Kunzelman, how do you vote?
Agreed.
Agreed. So all 7 councillors have voted. It's unanimous and passed. Now at 14.5, the Environment Sustainability Committee, and the recommendation is that Council adopts the recommendations of the Environment Sustainability Committee report, number 2021-05 of the 10th of June 2021. I'll hand over to the Chair to see how he'd like to handle that report.
Thank you, Mayor. There was actually no new business on the agenda for that committee. It was just simply confirmation of minutes of previous meeting, so I'll move that the committee report be received.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder for that report? Thank you, Councillor Jonick. Any discussion? No? I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. All 6 councillors in the room have raised their hand. Councillor Kunzelman, how do you vote?
Agreed.
Agreed, so it's unanimous and carried. Thank you, Councillor Fichtner. Thank you. We're up to item 14.6, which is the Ipswich Central Redevelopment Committee. And that recommendation is that the council adopts the recommendations of the Ipswich Central Redevelopment Committee report number 2021-05 of the 10th of June 2021. I note that Councillor Doyle, who's the chair, is not here today. I can see there are 5 reports there. And I propose that we move all 5 items together as a batch. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Jonik. I'll leave it open for any questions or any discussions. There being none, I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. I see that all 5 of us in the room have voted in the affirmative. Councillor Kunzelman, how do you vote on that matter?
Agreed.
Agreed. So it's unanimous and passed. Thank you. I'll just wait for Councillor Fechner to come back to the room. I just think that Council Island's left the room. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 15, the officers' report. And the first one there, 15.1, is the CEO Organisation Performance Report for May. And that recommendation that the report be received and the contents noted. CEO, would you like to speak to that report?
Thank you, Mayor, Chair and councillors. I would. I will understand, of course, that the matters highlighted, the current significant matters in the report are taken as read, but it would be remiss of me to not take the opportunity to highlight the point and in time at which we're at, with tomorrow being the last ordinary business day of operation out of the current administration buildings for Ipswich City Council. As I've been highlighting for some months now, there's been a significant amount of work to transition more than 750 of Council's workforce to the new administration building, and it is indeed, as you have noted at the special council meeting this morning, ahead of schedule by some months. However, it is certainly the big and final push right through to the end, with an enormous amount of activity happening in the building to finalise all of the moving, the assembly, the installation, the unpacking, and all that's attached to operationalising such a significant workforce into such a significant building. So it's an all hands to the pump effort, with a number of staff going to be working through and including the weekend to do as much as we can to have the building in the best possible state on Monday. As I've noted in the report, there will be issues, there will be defects. I've called in the past for us all to keep working together and to be patient and tolerant and really embrace this very, very significant opportunity for council to enter into a new era, if you like, in new environment with far greater opportunities for collaboration between officers across all of the 5 departments of council. So we are very excited. We welcome the opportunity, and we look forward to serving the residents, to the community, serving the community even better than ever before from the new environment of 1 Nicholas Street. Also, just if I may, to further to the vote of thanks that Council adopted this morning, which included thanks to the officers that have taken part in, once again, serving you as a council in producing the annual plan and the operational budget for 2021-22, just from me, on behalf of the organisation, thank you to all the officers involved. It has been a tremendous team effort once again and a great piece of work, so thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, CEO. I'll move that report. May I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Fechner. Any questions of the acting CEO? No? I guess moving in discussion, I also note it's great to see those figures on safety and reduction in time lost to injury come down. It's a great accomplishment. I also note that this council won quite a few awards at the Local Government Managers Association Excellence Awards. The Food Truck Friendly Council and the Carolee Library Pod both came first in their category, with the only council in Queensland received 2 firsts. We also had finalists with the Ipswich Trekkers 2.0 and the Ipswich, and also the Transparency Integrity Hub was also a finalist as well. So I think congratulations to the organisation on such a great achievement. If there's no other discussion, I'll put item 5.1 to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. All 6 councillors in the room have voted for that. Councillor Kunzelman? How do you vote?
Agree.
Okay, all 7 councillors have
Agree.
voted. Thank you very much, Councillor Kunzelman. And it's passed, carried. We now move on to item 15.2, which is the naming proposal for the Northern Sports Fields. And there are 2 recommendations here. Recommendation A is that Council resolve to select a name or names for the area described in the Northern Sports Field, Development Application 22A and 22B. And B is recommendation A is compatible with human rights and relevant human rights have been given proper consideration under the Human Rights Act. I propose that we put those together, but I guess we probably need to have a discussion. So I note that there is no name in there proposed yet. So if I can ask for a mover and a seconder, noting that once we go into discussion, we'll have a discussion on what those names will be.
What sort of motion are you suggesting to start with? To pick a name or two?
To go into discussion, we need to have a mover and a seconder under our meeting procedures.
Yeah, but to move, we need a motion too.
Yeah. So the motion is that Council resolve to select a name.
Oh, yeah,
I know.
yeah, okay. I'll
Move something.
I'll move that. I'll move that we consider a name.
I'll move that we'll consider. I'll put one there. We could open for discussion. That Springfield Central Park is considered. And seek a seconder so we can go into discussion.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Now feel free to raise any name. As we go into discussion, I think in the report we talk about suggested names being Springfield, Springfield Central, and what kind of suffix with its grounds, park, sports precinct and stadium. I think it would be really great to hear from councillors in Division 2 who are in that area and as drive past there every single day, if they have some views and thoughts on that.
I would just like to put my skin in the game and propose Springfield Central Parklands as an option.
Yep.
As a foreshadowed motion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll just say
Maybe
a few
have a
words.
discussion. I think because of the nature of this, I'd love for us to have a bit of a discussion and then probably look at amendment or something. I just put that there as a placeholder.
Yeah, I think the word, even though I seconded that motion, that
Yeah.
was for the purposes of a discussion.
Yes.
2 things. One is in relation to the suburb description. I think it's important that the suburb name that we choose, if we use a suburb name at the start, which would make a lot of sense, that it does reflect the actual suburb in which it's located. There may be an argument under Section 15 of the Place Names Act of 1994 that that it does require the correct suburb name to be used, and that's similar to what we've put into town planning applications for many years, that developers can't use the wrong suburb name. The word parklands actually, to me, is an all-embracing sort of much. A park can be anything from 400 square metres to a very large area. I'd be quite happy to support that. I think one of the names suggested was for discussion was stadium, but there were reasons that I think the company behind the support figure didn't see it as reaching that stadium sort of level. So I'd be quite easy with Springfield Central parklands as well.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. If I may.
Yeah,
Mayor,
please,
through
Councillor
you,
Fittner, yeah.
I'm supportive of if Councillor Johnnick were to propose an amendment to the current resolution for Springfield Central Park lands, you know, I like that name. And
Yeah.
I think it's very fitting of the precinct as well. And I support Councillor Tully's very pragmatic approach in the naming conventions and keeping it specific to the suburb. I think it makes sense, and I can't wait to see it on the ABC News app on my phone. And we're talking about all of the good in women's AFL that happens down at the fields.
I'm getting a hand raised from one of the council officers, so I'll bring him to the lectern. Is he about to tell us we can't use parklands for a reason? Please state your name and your job title.
Good afternoon, councillors. Brett Davey, Waste and Circular Economy Transformation Manager. If I can direct you to the report.
Yes.
On page 99 of the report, we have a list of existing named assets which may pose potential conflicts
Yes.
in naming, and Springfield Central Parklands is listed in there. Page 99 is a table in the report.
Geographically.
In Springfield Central, it's a broader ribbon of parkland that joins along creeks through that area.
Is that the one done through the southern part of Springfield, right around the back of Brookwater?
I'd have to get a map to be able to define that. I'm not particularly familiar with the spatial extents.
Just through you, Mayor, and to Mr. Davey, if we were to be using navigational technology to get to Springfield Central Parklands, is there presently an identified location on a map that would take you to?
I would presume so. I'd need to check using the relevant technologies, but it is a gazetted name, so it's been formally named. Whether it's commonly used for that purpose is another question that we could look at, but yes, there is certainly a precinct that's already named.
Yeah, I might just add, I think it is. I think it's that area that goes almost to the southern boundary of Ipswich where it adjoins Logan City and comes up through Springfield Central. So Springfield Lakes, possibly Springfield Central, maybe even Springfield and Brookwater, and comes back onto Augusta Parkway up near Augustin Heights. So I think that was the one that we named. There is certainly a sign on Augusta Parkway. It would run 5 or 6 kilometres or more.
That specifically referenced the Springfield Central Park.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you Google, one of my colleagues has just provided a image that on the corner of Springfield Lakes Boulevard and Summit Drive, Springfield Central Parklands, you'd be directed there if you Googled it.
I've just popped it into my search engine and it's just come through as Rebel Domain on the map, which is quite
Rebel
confusing.
Domain is part of that. No.
I remember seeing that.
I think it's part of the tour.
Yeah.
Councillor, if you're going to speak, please put your microphone on, please.
There could be, Councillor Tully, maybe a recommendation be to rescind the previous decision to name Springfield Central Parklands.
I was going to Mr. Davey, if this council would really like to name a significant asset like the stadium there, the arena, and the adjoining areas, parklands, what would be? Thank you for bringing that up there.
That's all right.
What would be involved? How much would it cost, and what consultation, and all that sort of stuff?
Look, for a parkland, that would be an interesting prospect because you don't necessarily have the same level of inconvenience that you would have for changing a road name or something like that. I suppose anything is possible. There would be far less implications of changing a parkland name than there would be changing a road. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't think there would be any specific issue with changing that. There would be costs with adjusting the necessary systems and any naming in the asset space of physical naming.
Are there any assets there? And obviously, is there sporting teams that are there and that sort of stuff? We'd obviously have to change agreements.
I'd have to check on that, whether it's got any flow-on effect on agreements. Just, a general flag in this space is when you look at that list, that table of page 99, there are a lot of assets that are named Springfield Central something. So I think you do need to have a well-defined name that's easily put into the likes of Google to direct people to the right location. Now, Parklands might make that case.
Yeah, so I suggested that for simplicity and for wayfinding, and if that is a connection to that that park that's already named that in a linear connection, could that just flow through?
It potentially could flow through. I'd just have to double check the full spatial extent. The challenge you may have is being specific in directing people using electronic devices and the likes of Google. So if you've got a very broad area that's named a specific thing, then you could be directed to all sorts of locations.
Could I just, that is a difficulty, there's no doubt about that. And that definitely is the section from the almost the Logan City boundary, right north and then northwest, linking up to around the back of Brookwater to Woogaroo Creek. And that name's been there maybe for a decade, maybe a little bit longer. Is another possibility, like perhaps the Springfield Central, but I don't like sports precinct so much, but maybe sporting precinct as an alternative, because it will always be a sporting precinct, it won't be much else. So I just sort of toss that into the ring as well. I personally think stadium's pretty good. Like, we can name the whole thing a stadium. That to me, that sounds impressive. And if there's any Olympic Games functions there, they'll call it the stadium at Springfield Central. I think that's got a little bit of oomph to it.
And so to be clear on other names that are existing and gazetted in the area, so you've got Springfield Central Sports Complex, Springfield Central Boulevard, obviously being a road, Springfield Central Parkland, and Springfield Central Sport and Community Hall. So that's one of the challenges with this space, and in hindsight, we could have looked at this a bit more holistically when some of these other assets were named years ago to maybe consider a different strategy, but that's what we've got with.
Thinking about the... Sorry, Councillor Johnny.
Sorry, I understand where Councillor Tully's coming from. The only thing that I've got an issue with is that singular use of stadium where there's two fields there. That's the only thing that doesn't get over the line with me. But I do understand where you're coming from.
Mayor, we could be here till midnight tossing figures and thinking.
Well, yes, and I think in the end we need to make a decision if we're happy, if we wish to make it Parklands, I guess, is probably the one that's most popular here.
Could we just get a... Sorry.
Yeah, is there a time imperative? Do we have to know this today, or what's the implication if it's delayed a month or late on the table?
There isn't a set time imperative. However, I would suggest that with the other movements going on in the Olympic bid space and the ongoing construction of the facility, that the sooner we land on a gazetted name, the better.
Yes, I did see a report calling it the Ipswich Stadium. I must admit, I did see that.
Could I suggest we set up a working group of 2 or 3 or 4 councillors and the relevant officers to come back with a proposal? Otherwise, we're just jumping from stadium to sports park, sports grounds.
May I suggest, Councillor, I think we've had at least 2 workshops. Correct me if I'm wrong. We've had other briefing papers. We've had quite a few workshops on it, and we've not landed on anything. So the reason why we're bringing this here today is that we do need to make a decision. So thank you for the suggestion.
But we've got that motion. But I'll move an amendment that'd be called the Springfield Central Sporting Precinct.
Well, as the mover, I guess I wouldn't. I'd be more inclined to look at the parkland, I guess, as the mover of this.
But we've already got that note. That actually, I think that area is part of the Springfield Central Parklands.
So what are you saying? Springfield
I think
Central?
it is as well.
It is. It's that longitudinal
Potentially it
linear-
runs up the creek.
Yes.
I'd have to just double check the spatial extent of the naming report. I'd have to go back through to that naming report, which I don't have at hand. My apologies.
Or
So-
it runs.
So what were you suggesting, Springfield Central,
Sporting precinct.
knowing that we already have Springfield Central Sports Complex? That would be the only thing I'd say
Well,
to
yeah,
consider. It's most people will get it confused, I think.
Sheila?
I don't, Councillor, did you want to put
I just think that rather than have any confusion, if we call it stadium, at least it stands out from all the other sporting complexes and parklands and everything else. It's a destination.
Thank you, Councillor Milligan.
Mayor, I concur with Councillor Ireland in that I think stadium would be appropriate for that precinct. Thinking back to QE2 Sports Stadium at Nathan, that was purpose-built for the Commonwealth Games. That was the main arena stadium, also included the training field beside. So I think stadium doesn't have to refer completely to the main field. It can also include the additional field to the side. I think I'd raised that in our previous discussions in workshop. So I, with that respect, I concur with Councillor Ireland in that we should just call the whole complex a stadium. It makes it stand out as the purpose of that area, and if it is going to be put forward for possible use during the 2032 Olympics, then we know that it's the stadium.
Thank you. I'll just ask Councillor Kunzelman, you haven't spoken to this yet. Would you like to weigh in on this?
Yes, certainly. I'm thinking stadium. I think it's sufficiently distinctive.
Thank you. I guess I'm looking back at the Division 2 councillors.
I just got a message from former councillor David Morrison, who suggests Springfield Central Stadium. He must be watching.
Well, yeah,
Hi, David.
unfortunately, he didn't get voted in.
Thanks,
But
David.
But he certainly is very passionate about Springfield. Yeah. Yeah.
Look,
Okay.
yeah, I would tend to agree then. So then it's easier to wayfind. Otherwise, it just gets a little bit too confusing, doesn't it? And that's
So-
what we're trying to not achieve.
So the
was added
suggested
confusion.
amendment is Springfield Central Stadium. I'm happy to accept that as the seconder, Councillor Tully. You'll accept
Yeah,
that?
I'll accept that as a seconder.
Thank you very much. I'll open it up again
I'm
for...
sorry, can I clarify? Mayor, can I clarify? It's at Springfield Central Stadium.
Correct. Yes, Councillor Kunzelman.
I like it.
We haven't voted yet. But I'll take that as a comment. Okay. Any other discussion?
Yeah, in the spirit of making concessions in present company, I'm supportive of Springfield Central Stadium, and I guess there's an opportunity to give it directional wayfinding after the naming of, and I'm sure it will naturally become its own, and people will start to describe the north and the south of the stadium precinct as their own things. So, yes, I will be supportive of calling it Springfield Central Stadium.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, I'll move the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And all 6 councillors in the room have said yes. Councillor Kunzman, I'll just double check. How are you voting on this item?
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yes,
It's
please.
unanimous. Thank you, and carried. Yay. Let's move on to item 15.3, which is the resource recovery strategy. Another thing for you, Councillor John, to get very excited about. And there are 4 recommendations here. I guess I'd look at moving these all 4 together. We can discuss them, unless there's any reasons why we wouldn't move all 4 together. No? So this is the resource recovery strategy and implementation plan. The recommendation A is that the 2021-2031 City of Ipswich Resource Recovery Strategy, as detailed in attachment 1 of this report, be adopted. B, that the 2021 Resource Recovery Implementation Plan, as detailed in attachment 2, be adopted. that see that the council endorse a 12-month trial of food organics, garden organics, and Ipswich is going to have to get used to this term, FOGO collection service for approximately 1,000 properties, which is anticipated to commence in August 2021. This FOGO trial will be conducted at no additional charge to the residents within the trial area and is in preparation for the introduction of the citywide FOGO service plan for 2023-2024. And D is that recommendations A to C are compatible with human rights and relevant human rights have been given proper consideration under the Human Rights Act. Do I have a mover for these four? Councillor Johnny and Councillor Fickner, I'll take that you will second this. Would anyone like to speak to the relevant council officer on this? Yes? Yes, please. Could you please state your name and title? And I think Councillor Ireland had her hand up first.
Dave McAllister, Resource Recovery Manager.
Good afternoon. I'm just wondering if you will have little bins that we can take out to community meetings with us when, once the trial has started, but are you going to have something that we can actually take to meetings with us?
More than happy to supply those. Yes, we have those already. I would think we're having quite a large engagement process for yourselves across the community through all aspects of the strategy. The strategy will have multiple engagement points across the community, hence the 4 pillars of the strategy. And in my opinion, councillors and mayor are integral to that conversation. So whatever collateral you require to help us promote the strategy, I'm more than happy to engage and endorse and have available to
Councillor
you.
Jonik and I went to a multicultural meeting recently and they had all 4 bins out and I would have assumed they had them marked and it didn't work. So I'm just thinking, well, okay, we need to be out there more. I don't want the big bins to have to take in, but something smaller with
More than
pictures
happy
or
to,
something
yeah.
that we can show people what they have to do.
100% endorse, and in fact, the whole point of the strategy is to give us all the tools we need to take forward to the community and have a package that everybody can talk to and spruik for the outcomes we're all trying to achieve. And
Thank you.
the more feedback from yourselves, the better.
Thank you. Councillor Fickner, you had a question?
Mr McAllister, I'm not trying to coach a soundbite out of you. However, the strategy does speak specifically to, and when we're looking at the implementation of the strategy, returning glass to the yellow bin lid in 2021. Do we have an ETA on an exact date when that rollout will begin?
In essence, glass is already allowable into the bin through our contract. We will be pushing through a large media campaign within the first quarter of 2021. So it's imminent, I suppose, is the answer. We haven't actually fixed a date yet because it's probably timed to things like rates notices, so we can have flyers in the rates notices and that sort of stuff. So it's my take. I will ask my colleague in the audience, Mr. Gard, who's my strategy coordinator, if he has a time in mind for a significant launch.
I think people want to know what month.
Yes.
What month?
Yes.
Is it July, August, September?
No, look, we're looking to do a large media campaign, and I think...
Sorry, the public can't hear you. So I guess if I could just say, which July, August, or September?
I think September.
September.
I'm going to take September as a time frame to do the campaign, and again, we'll provide whatever comms required to take us down that path.
That's awesome. I've got a second question with regards to the recycling mart that's mentioned in the implementation plan. I understand not in the implementation plan until 2025, but is that in essence a tip shop?
Correct.
Is that what that
Correct,
means?
and yes. The theory being that by the time the third transfer station is constructed, that would be the potential location to do that, because you would co-locate the assets.
Awesome.
Therefore, you're not transferring product somewhere else.
Yep.
So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McAllister. I just want to thank you for all of this work and for your team as well. This was actually on my wish list of provisional matters, I guess, but that extra area, Refuge Station, for the circular economy, for a tip shop was all something that I really am passionate about. And to speak to Councillor Ireland's request to get mini bins and things for us to take on the journey, especially when we are going to parts of our city that, have residents from non-English speaking backgrounds. Their leaders are there with them at the time, and things can be translated in real time. They can pick up on our passion for moving forward with this strategy. And so I'm sure that you will deliver us the tools and the goods that we need. I just wanted to speak on that and to thank you again. So,
Mr McAllister, recommendation C is going to be something very different for our council. So what we're looking at doing, from what I can gather, is people have a green bin, if they don't already have one, for free, and their red bin will be picked up every fortnight, every week. Is that correct?
So your organic bin, the green
Yes.
bin you already have, if you had one, and the ones that don't have one will get one. They will be picked up every week, and the red bin will move to a fortnightly collection for the period of the trial. Purpose being that the product in that red bin should be actually in the organic bin. And so the vast majority of product will still be picked up every week.
Okay. The question I'll get asked is, just so I have kids in nappies, and I've got to keep my red bin for 2 weeks. How does that work? How does that work elsewhere in Queensland, where it's hot?
Where it's worked elsewhere in Queensland is the short answer, it hasn't, because
Right.
along with ourselves and several other parties who are commencing trials at the same time, we're all about the same timing. So there's 4 groups, and also Brisbane now is commencing a organics trial as
Right.
well. These are the parts of the trial that we need to investigate to understand
Right.
how you might deal with that, what percentage of people might be impacted on
Right.
that. The trial communication the customers will get will say to them, if you have issues, please call us and we will
Right.
address it. So again, we have to work through these trial conversations in order to facilitate those answers. So it's a valid concern, 100% a concern we already have in our comms package, and the media and comms that will come to yourself shortly will show those questions. There'll be frequently asked questions on the web pages. There'll be all these ability for the residents in the trial area to engage very directly with our waste officers to address that. Short answer is, if people really want an extra collection during the trial, we'll just send the trucks
Right.
to help them out.
Okay. And you mentioned there were 4 areas doing this? What are the
So
others?
we have Rockhampton,
Okay.
Lockyer and Townsville all
Okay.
participating in a program, similar program. And then I've recently been advised that Brisbane is also
Okay.
progressing down a trial at the same time.
Okay. And I guess from what I can gather, the biggest advantage of this, apart from the recycling of the FOGO, but it's also the landfill, so the reduction in the volume in the red bin.
So as a general rule, approximately 50% of a red bin
Wow.
is organic material
Yep.
that really should be recovered through composting or other process, in line with our targets put forward by the strategy, which align to the state's targets. This is the terminology, the low-hanging fruit that
Okay.
we should be targeting to remove that product at the most cost-effective and sensible way.
Okay, thank you. Yes,
Mayor?
Councillor Ireland?
So those that are already paying for a green bin, they won't pay for their green bin anymore, so the green bin's free.
So the rates will be amended from the first quarter, or post the first quarter actually. They'll be amended for a 12-month period, so they'll be given, in essence, a free green waste service. So those people
$80
currently
discount.
Yeah, so they get an $80
$12 a
discount.
week, I can spend a quarter, I can spend somewhere else.
So if that's you, Councillor Owen, there's an $80 discount for
Yeah,
you.
just for clarification through you, Mayor, Mr McAllister, only within the trial area.
Only within the trial area.
Yeah.
Island, green bins
Yeah,
within
only
the
the trial
trial
area.
area. Yeah.
Yes.
Approximately 270 homes
Yeah.
from memory across the
Okay.
trial area
Thank you.
are impacted, or the
Yes.
reverse of impacted. Yeah.
Are there any other questions of Mr McAllister? Councillor
Yeah,
Tully?
just in relation to that, how would the 1,000 properties be eventually identified? Would it be people coming forward? Or would it be on a random
Already-
basis?
No, so we've had to pick distinct precincts in the suburbs that we've chosen, and those precincts are bound by, roads, runs, so that we can set a parameter to collect just in those areas.
Okay, yeah, so it'd be, in essence, a a range of people within those precincts.
100%, all the factors that we put forward need to include different types of housing, different types of property, but able for us to contain in that collection zone.
Now,
there was- I think there's two suburbs. I think there's two parts of
Bellbird-
two suburbs.
Bellbird Park and
And
Raceview,
Raceview,
parts
parts of-
of,
a
obviously
part of
not the whole
Raceview.
suburb, but
That's fine. And will that, in those areas, will people be obliged to be part of the trial?
In essence, yes. Otherwise, it's very hard to get a trial result.
So there's no plan, if the red bins were going to be collected fortnightly, there'd obviously be no plan to increase the size of those ones or even to reduce the size of the red bins?
Our current plan and the current strategy is to leave the red bins at 240 litre size. Many councils in southern states reduce those down to 120 or 140. That is not our strategic plan for a multitude of reasons. And again, I go to the point that 50% of the product actually should be in the organic bin already, so people really shouldn't have a lot of waste left over based on what we know as what average bin weights look like.
Did you say earlier that there had been some, in other council areas, some kickback from the community about picking up the usual red bin fortnightly instead of weekly?
We are by far not the first people to do this. A very large portion of the southern states do this, and New South Wales is moving to mandate this across the whole state. To answer your question specifically, it is one of the key kickback areas that we know will come, and that's again part of the trial proposal to actually understand that, manage that, bring people along the journey. And most of these, well, if not all these places that are operating in the south are now been running for years, and everybody's moved to that paradigm.
And does this incorporate a proposal for a larger yellow bin as the standard size?
So larger yellow bin is also part of our strategy as a whole. It's not part of the FOGO trial specifically, but the yellow bin, larger yellow bin will come back in relation to the question earlier around glass. There'll be an advertising campaign around recycling. It's not just about glass, it's about recycling as a whole. And yes, Councillor Tully, the larger yellow bins will come back into that mix.
Thank you. Just a final question in relation to curbside collection. The adoption of this report today, would that mean, in your understanding of this, that there'd be no free curbside collection this year?
So the way the report is written as it stands, the proposal right now is to have a free curbside collection for this financial year coming, for the 21-22 year, and then a proposal, assuming everybody agrees to move forward from that, to move to the user pays model post that.
But does this report, and I find it a little bit sort of complex to, with attachments and so on, does this commit us to going down that second path for future biennials?
It's a strategic goal, so you're not committed to it, and we would work through that with yourselves. The strategic goal is to align, obviously, to the directives and to put in best practice in those aspects of this, but ultimately it's a council-driven, community-driven process, and we'll
But the adoption of this today wouldn't commit us to abandoning the biennial collection each 2 years after this year?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify that, because I had a similar question before, obviously we're committed to doing the next one. Actually, which month will that be happening, Mr McAllister?
The goal would be around September, October.
September this year?
This year, because they'll try and get it done before it gets too hot.
Okay.
Obviously, we haven't started that procurement process, so
Yep.
that's quite a tight.
It's probably my understanding that
timing
we'll
window.
have discussions within council whether we do go to an on-demand or keep it as it is and those kind of things, but this doesn't commit us to doing that. It just, I guess it's flagging it with the community and seeing how we go, I think. Yep. Any other questions of Mr McAllister? No, thank you very much. I know that Councillor Johnnick has moved it and Councillor Fichtner have seconded this. I'll open up for a greater discussion now.
Yeah, I must say that although I support elements of this, obviously, like the continuation of the biennial curbside collection and the glass and the FOGO, I am really concerned about red bins, even though part of a trial with 1,000 properties. Queensland is a very hot state. And you mentioned nappies, but there's whole stacks of other things that go into red bins where it wouldn't be unreasonable to think that could be a health hazard. in Queensland. You see bins now, they're often fly blown within hours of a material going out. And we can't even get a lot of people to distinguish between red bins and yellow bins at the moment. You know, the contamination which occurs at the moment is pretty significant. And even though I'm sort of flexible about trials, like when I first came to Ipswich, we used to get two pickups with the each week in the smaller carry bins when the garbos would come in and get huge Christmas presents with each year. I'm just really concerned about that red bin issue because I think in the heat of summer that's not attuned to our hot environment.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr McCarthy, may I ask you to come back to the lectern? Do you know off the top of your head what the cross-contamination is between the red and the yellow bins? What kind of percentage that is at, or?
21%.
21% of what's in the yellow bin shouldn't be there?
21% of the yellow bin shouldn't be in there.
Right.
Average should be down closer to 10 to 12%. Again, I go back to the fact that the advertising education campaign that's part of this trial is to move Ipswich out of that paradigm.
Okay.
That's the whole point. And I fully agree with Councillor Tully in terms of heat and odour. I will point out that the putrescible material, the stuff that smells, is the stuff that should be in the organic bin, sans nappies, but that's its own issue.
Okay. Thank you, Mr McAllister. Sorry. Sorry, your microphone.
But that'll only be picked up fortnightly.
Your odorous material is, in essence, the food organic material, and it will be picked up weekly. If the people do the right thing and put it in the right bin, in the organic bin, your putrescible material, what creates odour is organic material. The organic material should be in the only thing, except nappies, obviously. Nappies are its own issue, and that will be a percentage of the population, and we will deal with this through the trial, and that's the whole point. I want those people to actually ring me and say, I need this weekly, and we might decide to have, for example, a weekly waste service for a year for individual properties who have nappies. Just spitballing.
Yeah.
But it gets plenty hot in parts of New South Wales and Victoria, and they're mandating this across the state. Again, the stuff that smells is the organic material. It should be out of there, and it should be out of there every week.
Yeah.
That's
will Townsville and Rockhampton be starting these
very similar timing.
This year as well?
Very similar timing.
Okay.
We're all going around August, September. Just a slight correction to what's up there since we wrote this is we're probably likely to commence in September now from an actual delivery of bin caddies and all the other associated parts of this trial.
Okay. Thank you. So, Councillor Fittler, did you have a question?
Just if the yellow bin contamination included the glass that's presently going in there. That contamination figure, does that include the glass that's presently going in there that isn't meant to be?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
No,
Outside of glass, it's
My
20.
personal take on glass is not a contaminant in your recycle bin.
Yeah. It is. Yeah.
But that's not go there. Ipswich does have unique challenges in terms of its product in this yellow bins, and we're not shying away from the fact that that's a large education campaign.
Okay. Any other questions of Mr McAllister? No,
Mayor?
thank you. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, Councillor.
Mr McAllister, would it be a fair observation in your opinion that the mechanics, the physical process of providing these services and improving our waste streams to best practice is totally possible, and that the main challenge for us as a council, as the Waste Service Collection Agency, is educating our consumers and taking them on the journey with us to achieving the desired targets. Would that be a...
It's a very fair summary, Councillor Milligan.
Thank you.
Logistically, it's not overly challenging. We're just switching around aspects of what we do, increasing the volume of collections relative to everybody having organics bins. We don't shy away from the fact that education and bringing people along this journey is the hardest part of this, and many of us have been doing this for a long time, and that's the hard part.
And Mr Councillor, obviously we're operating in an environment where there are federal and state regulations and targets with other nations not taking Australia's waste anymore, and we're
100%.
having to deal with our own waste since about 2018. What are the targets that the Australian government and the Queensland government have set when it comes to landfill?
So
and
simplest one straight off the bat is that we've got to achieve a 55% diversion rate by 2025.
55% by
So
2025.
55% of your municipal waste stream should be diverted. We're approximately 23% now. So that's
Is that a federal or a state?
that's the state target,
State, yep.
and then that state target increases to 75 and then 90% over
Okay.
the preceding years. These are very ambitious targets at that point. We have chosen in our strategy to, in essence, match the state target because that's the target we've all got to get to. If we adopt the strategy and we deliver, we're aiming it at 60% diversion
Okay.
through the adoption of these processes. I would also point out that there are separate parts in this.
Yep.
There's very significant separate parts around recycling, organics, the infrastructure we need to separate product, all part of the strategy. And you can't really treat them as separate. They all need to be run in conjunction to achieve the outcomes. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Mary?
Thank you,
Yep.
Mr McAllister. Any other questions? No. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Before we go on for more discussion, may I have Councillor John and Councillor Fichtner's permission for C where it says commence in August 2021 to change it to September 2021?
Acceptable.
Is that acceptable to the both of you? Thank you. Open up for discussion.
Yeah, just through you, Mayor, I fully support recommendations A through D, A and B, which is the resource recovery plan and the implementation plan associated with that. Are the beginnings of what is the progressive nature of the state of waste in our state and indeed the country. These trials need to happen. I'm fully support of rolling out this FOGO trial. I don't think that there's anything within the trial that the team can't handle. And I think that it's really important data collection for us as a city, but also as a state. I mean, this is a joint effort. There are 3 other councils, and plus now hearing of Brisbane doing it. It's a huge shift. If you see what's happening down south, we're lagging in that respect as a state. So I think that the faster we can step closer towards, the weekly FOGO, I'm very supportive of that. I'm interested to see how it could roll out in the commercial arm of Ipswich City Waste Services as well. But I know, council officers, let us know one step at a time. But it's good to think about the future of waste, and it's good to be, one of the most progressive local government areas in Queensland when it comes to this. So. Within the resource recovery plan, there's a commitment, to turn this FOGO trial, if all going well, into a citywide rollout by 24-25. And that's where we need to be, absolutely, because there are broader implications of cleaning up the waste stream out of the red bin, where model citizens, we're encouraging model corporate citizens by imploring our customers, which are our residents of Ipswich City Waste Service, to clean up the waste stream in their bin, so less is going to landfill. And the ripple effect of doing something like this will mean that we have a fairly clean and a well-sorted waste stream to go to recycling plants and have very little that need to go to landfill. And if you want to take one step back again and look at the waste hierarchy, these are measures that we're taking now that make something like an incinerator seem like it's technology of the past before we've really even investigated that in our state. I think that the closer we are to focusing on our waste stream and how we can best deal with that, allows us to make far better decisions as to where our waste is going as a city. So I think that there are so many really, really wonderful aspirations in this document that are completely achievable if we're prepared to make the difficult decisions, if we're prepared to commit to the rollout, if we support our residents to do so. This material, this resource recovery strategy will lead to some really amazing things and to stimulate economies that don't presently exist. Creating, identifying end users for recycled products is ultimately where we want to be. I think that this is the start of something really good, and this is something that this entire council has been so passionate about for 2 years now. And to deliver this really substantial decision, and I speak to it, in anticipation that my fellow councillors will support and rally around this as well. On budget day in 2021 is pretty monumental, and these are the kind of progressive decisions that I've loved being a part of here as a leader in our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fechner. Anyone else like to speak to this? If I may speak to it, I guess I have 4 points that I'd like to raise. We have a legal obligation. Waste is one of those 3 things that local councils look after, roads, rates and rubbish. So we actually have a legal obligation to reduce our landfill by 55%. But I'd argue here in Ipswich, with what we have on our doorstep, we have a moral and an ethical obligation to be model citizens. We are asking the waste industry to step up. We also need to step up, and I'd be very proud for us to be a leader in Queensland, to be a model council and how we manage waste and how the residents here manage waste. I think the education part, which has been noted, is going to be considerable. It's a big change for how we do things. We're having the little FOGO, the little composting bin in the kitchen and taking it out to the green bin, as well as where do things go. So that I don't want us to underestimate how big that education piece is going to be for all of us. I think it's a sensible thing that we trial the models that have worked in our southern states. I think that's a sensible thing. And when I hear things that Townsville and Rockhampton are also doing this, that there's hotter, I'm hoping that you have things in place that the people that we're sharing lessons learnt. If people are having issues and difficulties during this trial, please, we actually need to know them so we can problem solve. Conversely, if things are going really well, it's also important for us to know what's working well so we continue doing that. And I guess my last point is the fact that by reducing our landfill, it makes having an incinerator in Ipswich even less attractive because we reduce the feedstock. So I think that there is ample opportunity. I think it's a great opportunity to trial it. It may not be perfect, but I think it's a great step in the right direction. And I'll be supporting this motion.
Just one more thing, Mayor, and to Councillor Tully's point earlier about, and yours just now with regards to the ongoing monitoring of it, maybe we could add a small sentence to recommendation C that each month we get an update from Mr McAllister as to how the trial is actually going. For us to be aware of what's happening and any particular risks that might arise, but B, to give it visibility over the full 12 months that we're rolling out this trial. So I would propose to amend recommendation C to add a sentence in the end to each month of the trial at that month's council ordinary, we receive an update.
May I ask for your indulgence? I'm just looking at the council. Is monthly okay or quarterly? And I guess I'm looking between the two of you to see.
We'll be collecting the data constantly.
Sorry, Mr. Okay, I'll get you.
Can I suggest a monthly data update and then a quarterly, more of a summary? So more of a. So we've got some reporting requirements probably with the state as well that we're trying to match up. So the only thing I'm mindful of is not tripling or doubling up reporting. We will be capturing the data constantly. So I'm happy to provide constant updates on data, but I'd like to provide more of a sort of a quarterly summary. If that's
So we're looking at C for a. Or we make a.
So could I suggest bringing
Happy
it back?
for you to workshop the words, Mayor.
Okay. See that we'll have a monthly
Monthly
data,
update to this.
a monthly data,
Yeah, and a quarterly. To
and a
this
quarterly
forum.
report.
Yeah. No, yeah.
It's
That-
probably-
that sounds great.
it's
I
probably
wasn't
right.
asking for a full report every month, just, even if it was just the resource recovery manager giving us
And-
a verbal.
Probably come to the GIW, the Growth and Infrastructure and Waste.
Happy.
Yep.
Would be a more
Happy.
appropriate committee,
Yep,
if that's
happy-
okay with,
happy for
I'm
that to
just looking at the mover now, Deputy Mayor, are you comfortable with that? Thank you. I'll just wait for. Thank you. Any other discussion? I'll just wait for Ms Lucas to do it so we can actually see what all the recommendations look like, because we've played with them a little bit. So I'll just read out, especially for the live stream. That recommendation C is that council endorse a 12-month trial of both food organics, garden organics, or FOGO collection service for approximately 1,000 properties, which is anticipated to commence in September 2021. This FOGO trial will be conducted at no additional charge to the residents within the trial area and is in preparation for the introduction of the citywide FOGO service planned for 2023-2024, and that a monthly data report and quarterly summary report on the trial be provided to the Growth, Infrastructure and Waste Committee. Is there any other discussion? There be no discussion. I'll put all four recommendations to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. I'll look around the room. That's myself, Councillor Ireland, Councillor Johnnick, Councillor Fechner, Councillor Milligan have voted. Councillor Kunzelman, how do you vote?
Oh, yes, please.
Yes. Those against?
Yes.
Councillor Tully votes against. And so the motion is carried. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 15.4. Which is Council's response to the Inland Rail Helidon to Calvert Draft Environmental Impact Assessment submission. I think there's meant to be two recommendations here. Recommendation A, that Council endorse the document detailed in attachment 1 of the report by the consultant for Inland Rail dated 11th of June 2021, which will form the submission to the Coordinator General in response to the draft EIS for the Helidon to Calvert Inland Rail project. And B, that recommendation A is compatible with human rights and relevant human rights have been given proper consideration in accordance with the Human Rights Act. Would anyone like to ask the relevant council officer any questions? Yes, like you might. Councillor has. Thank you. Would you please state your name and your title?
Good afternoon, Richard Hancock. I'm the project manager for Council's Inland Rail project.
Thank you. Councillor Ireland. So could you put your microphone on?
Your Grantchester at-level crossing, Councillor Madsen and I are already being hammered by that being at level, because we were under the impression it was going to be higher than the road out to Laidley and the one up to Mount Mort, Grantchester Road. Was this always proposed to be an at-level crossing?
It was proposed to be a level crossing. I think the rail line there is on an embankment, so the rail line itself is somewhere between 2 and 3 metres above the road surface. So although it's a level crossing that goes up to an embankment and then back down the other side again.
Would have to be higher than 2 metres though, with trucks and buses going through?
Well, they're over the top. They go over the top of the rail line.
Okay.
Yeah.
It comes around a corner though. As we come from Laidley, that's sort of a blind corner.
It's on Grantchester Mount Mort Road, so the Rosewood Laidley Road goes around the corner. You come off the Rosewood Laidley Road across the Western Creek, across the bridge there, and then once you go over the bridge, the current design has an embankment going up over the railway line and back down again.
But that's a floodwater. That goes into that parkland.
Yes, that's the floodplain of Western Creek.
Okay.
The issues that Councillor Island is raising, are they in the report?
Yes, they are.
The report is council officers' response to the draft environmental impact statement. So council officers have assessed the information provided by ARTC against the terms of reference for the EIS, which was set back in 2017 with consultation from council at that point. So there is a space in there to comment on level crossings, and council, the response in our report there is that council doesn't feel that the EIS has adequately addressed the Queensland level crossing safety strategy, which states that there should be minimal new level crossings on new railway lines.
Am I able to give out any of these responses to the residents that are, saying, what are you doing? So I'm able to make it public for what we're...
That the report is already on the website as part of the minutes, part of the agenda of the meeting. So it's certainly a public document.
A lot of them won't sit down and read it all. They just come and ask a question. So the flooding issue, there's photos from the people on Ipswich Street. Last time it flooded out there, the water came over the existing railway line and was as high as the fence at the model steam train. How high I tried to understand it, but how high do we imagine that having a second embankment there is going to make the flood water?
Council hasn't remodelled the flood work that the ARTC have done. Council have provided some comments on the adequacy and the appropriateness of the flood modelling that ARC undertook. That's been reinforced by the report of the Independent Flood Panel, which was organised by the state and the federal government, that have come up with the same kind of conclusions, that there are some issues in the modelling which need to be addressed. And again, the Flood Panel report is a public document available on the Coordinator General's website. And again,
I'll just ask
it's
questions.
detailed. There's a lot of detail in it, yes. So we haven't specifically looked at that issue at that location and what impact that will have, but we will continue through the stages of design to review that flooding, those flooding models, and making sure that they're as robust as they can be.
If I go back to what Councillor Island was talking about with Grandchester, and I look at page 28 of 159 of 221, sort of appendix, so it does say that it's talking about proposed level rail crossing analysis results indicating rail crossing.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I cannot hear.
My apologies, I had my microphone off. My apologies. I'm talking about page 159 of 221, Appendix U, this item I there. And is that the level crossing you're discussing, Councillor Ireland? Result for a proposed level crossing on Grandchester, Mount Mort Road and Calvert Station Road?
That's the right location, yes.
Right, okay.
Sorry, Calvert Station Road's down between
Where is the
Rosewood
road
and
or
Grandchester.
the level crossing that Councillor Ireland is referring to?
That's the one on Grandchester Mount Mort Road.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's that one there.
So it's page 26, is that the one you're looking
I've got 28, sorry, there's another one
at?
there.
No.
Sorry, I've got a
Yeah,
few
there's
pages
multiple,
marked.
that section,
The reason why I highlight
Yeah.
that, because our response there is the proponent is to consider alternate, more appropriate LOS, is that line of sight or what?
line of sight definition.
Line of sight
yes.
definition for the rail level and crossing analysis. Does that address the issue that council, is that the
No.
level crossing?
No, that is at the level crossing, but that's a technical review of the design at that location. So that's a review of the level of the line of sight assessment.
Okay,
So that's saying line of sight at that location hasn't been.
okay.
Sorry, no, that's not line of sight. That's level of service.
Level service, sorry.
So that's talking about the traffic impact. So the number of vehicles and the queuing lengths and
Okay.
those kind of things.
So if this council wanted to incorporate some of the concerns that Council Island is having raised by residents, under which section would it go under, just so we get a bit more of an understanding of the context? And
Specifically,
156.
page 24 in the report.
Okay.
chapter, it's labelled A, although it comes after A as well.
24A.
The middle
Yep,
line there.
Table 19.22.
19.22, proposed level crossing at Grantchester Mount Mort Road. And then that says
Okay.
the proponent shall review the proposed level crossing treatment with a view to providing
So-
uninterrupted access.
So, Councillor, Council's coming back saying, and I want to know if you're happy with this or not. With regards to the proponent shall review the proposed road rail crossing treatment at Grantchester Mount Mort Road with a view to providing uninterrupted access to/from the community to the south of the inland rail corridor, including Grantchester State School, Spices Hidden Vale, and the significant agricultural catchment.
I don't understand exactly what they're proposing though. Like, I don't understand how it'll look if it doesn't cross the road and it's not going to be a bridge. I don't understand how it comes together.
Yeah, there haven't been any alternatives proposed. So, because of the level of the embankment, it's not feasible to put the road under the railway line. Although there is a proposal for a pedestrian underpass near the cricket fields to provide pedestrian access under there.
It'll flood all the time.
It will, yes.
Okay.
And by the same measure, a bridge over the top would be extremely high, be a very large structure. So there isn't the proposal. There isn't in here a proposal which gives an alternative.
So does that mean that what we should be saying is that we wish to see an alternative because the current design
Yeah.
we don't think is adequate?
The residents
Yeah.
are saying that they're not happy to have an at-level crossing. They're asking us to do something about it.
Because of traffic or flooding or both?
Well, for all of the reasons, but they also think that the traffic coming down Mount Mort Grantchester Road has increased, and if the trains are coming through regularly, they're not going to see it. I don't know, will they have red lights saying train coming through, every 15 minutes, or... I think we need to be able to explain to the residents how it's going to operate.
The level crossing will have red flashing lights and boom gates.
I was
At the
going to have
crossing.
boom gates,
It'll have
so
boom
they're going to be
gates.
up and down every 15 minutes.
Roughly every half an hour. There's 50 odd trains a day, so.
Well, that's not going to be very conducive to having, if we get the Olympic Games, to have every half hour that people have got to wait for trains to go through. Okay.
Okay. So noting that the concerns that the residents are raising with Council Island, how would you suggest we highlight some of this
There's a
information
line-
request there?
There is one line in here somewhere where the Queensland level crossing safety strategy is mentioned, because this is a review against the
What
terms
page
of
is that?
reference. And the
Sorry.
terms of reference required them to meet the level crossing strategy.
And what page?
I would have to go through and find it.
Okay.
There's, on page 156, you've got the rail crossings, that was where I picked up some of it. You mentioned two different types of crossings at level. I have to say, I've turned down so many pages now, I can't make quick reference, but,
Yes.
I'm getting the sense from what Councillor Island said that the wording here is probably not strong enough to convey the views of the residents.
Okay.
Would that be correct, Councillor Island?
I think so. I think that they're expecting us to come out and do something, but I just feel we're supporting the interchange. It's really hard. I don't know where I stand, I guess.
Well, hang on, Inland Rail pay us to employ you, that's correct?
That's right. But
So-
my role
so-
is to represent council's best interests.
So Mr Hancock's role is the residents' best interest. So if you have feedback that you wish to change or want to add or strengthen, now's your time to do that, because today is where we're going to be approving what goes ahead to that submission.
Yep.
Okay.
Certainly, I think
And that's why that's been sent around to us quite a few
Absolutely.
times, I think at least twice, for us to provide feedback.
yes, much of this is the same as the feedback we gave for the
Yes.
Calvert to Kangaroo
Yes.
project, which had the same
So
kind of
this has been
issues
undergoing
in
a
it.
couple of months as well.
This one's been going since March.
Yeah.
12 weeks, the same.
I think I have sent some my office has sent some requests through to you to get some information, but I really hate at level crossings that we're going to have trains coming through at every half hour, boom gates, stopping, businesses, and I don't know what the solution is, but they're really not happy in
Yeah,
Grantchester.
council, as part of this feasibility design was developed prior to 2019, and as part of that process, council provided feedback on the feasibility design, and our feedback was council does not accept level crossings on council's roads. So
But
that
we
was a
can't
very
stop
firm
it.
statement. That's for the next stage of design to negotiate.
Okay.
The intention is to get agreement on the design solutions between council and ARTC.
And when we did the Kangaroo, we did that a few
The
months ago.
Kangaroo project,
The
yes.
Kangaroo. We talked about, I think there were 6 level crossings in that,
Yes.
in Ipswich. And I can't remember the way that we, again,
There were 4
pushed back that we didn't
Yeah,
want them.
That's right. There were 4 in Calvert to Kangaroo and there's 2 here in the
There's 2
Helidon
here.
to Calvert section.
So is there a way that we could word this up to say it's quite strongly that the residents don't want those, primarily because of the half-hourly interruption?
That's right, yeah. There's safety issues, there are
Mayor,
disruptions,
I-
traffic issues.
Yes. Yes, Councillor Kunzelman, you have a good question?
My question is, isn't the emergency vehicle delay a very important factor?
It is absolutely one of the factors, yeah, definitely. ARTC have used a standardised assessment to assess the safety of level crossings, which looks at the number of trains, the number of vehicles, the frequency of the trains, and calculates the likelihood of an incident, the likelihood of a fatality. They've calculated that on the roads in Ipswich is very low, but not zero. But they've used that to justify why a level crossing is an appropriate solution on these roads. So we push back on that, but also adding things like the community concerns about traffic flow and queues, and the fact that it's if that road is blocked, there's a very long detour to get around.
Right.
Okay, I'll take away an action to write some more words.
So when
strengthen
is this
them.
due? I guess. My
The
apologies.
consultation period closed yesterday.
Okay.
We sent this in as an interim submission to the Office of the Coordinator General, who've said they will accept our submission, our final submission, when it's ready.
Okay.
They've had a couple of hundred responses already. It will take them time to sort them, so we do have some time to get it right.
Could this come potentially to the, I'm looking at the CEO now, the GIW, for council to spend a bit more time with you, Mr Hancock, to get the residents' concerns and for us to consider it for the GIW? Would that be? It's a massive concern for the residents out there. It really is, and I think we need to get that.
I would certainly agree that it's important to get right through you, Mayor, but also very keen not to miss the opportunity. So I guess, is it worth clarifying with the Coordinator General how much time they could give us, or are you pretty confident that it
I'm
would be
confident they will
sufficient?
accept our submission when it's ready.
Okay.
Months is probably not realistic, but certainly weeks.
So the next
Yeah.
Growth and Infrastructure,
Be-
and
be-
Waste Committee
It'd be
is
2 or 3 weeks, it would be, yeah.
9th of July. I think.
Can we get it on that meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, right. Yep. And
Is
that
that-
would give me an opportunity to present what some of the current solutions look like, would that be useful?
Okay.
Yep.
Can I call a meeting of the people that are very vocal in Grantchester and get you just to come and talk to them and get their comments or not?
Looking at the GM for any concerns.
As directed by my
but
GM?
I have no concerns. Yep, that'd be fine.
Okay, I'll jump on it tonight.
Okay.
Thank you. Because this has been going on since March, so apologies, Mr Hancock. But, okay,
This
so
is
we'll
part
leave
of the
that.
process.
It's part of the process. Okay. So based on that, would the best way to do is to amend this, or just lay it on the table for the GIW, refer it to the GIW? Might be the-
Refer, I think, is
Yep.
more appropriate procedurally.
I was looking at Wade procedurally. So based on the conversation today, and it looks like we do wish to strengthen up some of the work. Thank you, Mr Hancock. I'd like to refer this to the next GIW, which I think you said was the 9th of July, is that correct? Oh. I'll just say the next Growth, Infrastructure and Waste Committee meeting. Do I have a seconder for that?
Sorry, Mayor, correcting, is it, confirming, it is the 8th of July.
8th of July?
I will, may I,
Yes.
sorry, through you,
Yes.
take the opportunity to note that to enable a sufficient time for a meeting with the residents, consideration of that, it will be very tight.
Right.
So reports to the committee are due next.
Okay.
Yeah. So
When's the next ordinary council meeting, I guess?
that'll be on the 22nd.
22nd? Yep, okay. So I'll change that. That we refer this report to the next ordinary, for the July ordinary council meeting on the 22nd of July. May I have a second for that? Will I assume Councillor Ireland? Councillor Million? I'll open it for any discussion. No discussion. I'll put the matter to the vote for that to be referred. Those raise your hand, agree, raise your hand. All 6 councillors in the room have raised their hand. Councillor Kunzman, how do you vote?
Agreed.
Agreed, so that's unanimous, all 7 and carried. Thank you. Now the time, I would like to propose a 15-minute adjournment. I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. I can see all 6 have raised their hand in the room. Councillor Kunzman, how do you vote?
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Okay. So we'll come back here at 10 to. Thank you very much. Thank you. We're coming out of adjournment. It's 2:53. We're up to item number 15.5, the Planning Environment Court landfill/waste appeals. And there are 3 resolutions here which I propose that we move together. This is a report that's concerning legal counsel and expert fees incurred and anticipated as a consequence of council's participation in 3 Planning Environment Court appeals concerning landfills in its local government area. The report makes recommendations intended to facilitate the ongoing engagement of council's legal and expert team until the conclusion of the appeals. Recommendation A is that council note and accept the revised fee estimates from McInnes Wilson Proprietary Limited for the 3 Planning Environment Court appeals, which are listed there, totalling $6,469,773, with a contingency of 20% up to $1,293,955. And B, that pursuant to Section 257 of the Local Government Act, Council resolved that the Chief Executive Officer have the power to implement this decision, and C, that Council be informed as to the final cost of the appeals at their conclusion. And finally, this is recommendations A to C are compatible with human rights and relevant human rights have been given proper consideration in accordance with the Human Rights Act. May I ask the relevant council officer to speak? And I'm looking more probably from a legal, technical... Thank you. May you please state your name and your job title, please? Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor, Councillors and CEO. My name's Alison Ferris McDonald and I'm Deputy General Counsel.
Thank you. What was the original amount that was planned that this action would take?
There's never been an original amount planned as such. We don't approach litigation in that manner. What we usually do is we seek initial fee estimates from our legal counsel, and in the case of litigation, those fee estimates have to evolve over time as the cases evolve over time, and it's not always obvious from the beginning of a matter what direction it's going to take. So as the report points out, these appeals have been going on for a number of years now, since 2019. Back in 2019, it wasn't obvious that we would be where we are today. So the approach that we've been taking is, I suppose, an iterative and responsive approach to seeking fee estimates that have catered for developments as they've arisen.
And what have council done in regards to using in-house counsel to offset some of the costs?
Well, we always try to manage P&E appeals in-house in the first instance. Having said that, there's only 5 of us, whereas appeals of this scale, they take teams of lawyers to administer. So in the beginning, we've tried to manage as much in-house as we could, but going on over the years, you would need a team of many lawyers in itself within council to manage something like this exclusively internally.
Okay. The feedback I've had from residents who've been going in and obviously representing themselves, there's very happy with the representation that council has sought.
And we have been trying to provide a lot of assistance to the submitters in the appeal as well, in accordance with our obligations as a model litigant. That's the phrase, model litigant. As government, we are required to go above and beyond in terms of our dealings, not only with the court, but with other parties in the appeal. We're held to a higher standard, basically.
Okay. Some of the residents have been sort of sharing with me, I think, just some days the magistrate come out with a bit of an update or on how things are going and talk about the complexities of the case. Are you across
the magistrate, well, the judge will not provide any kind of insight into what decision he might be going to take. I imagine that any decision will take a long time to be arrived at. I would estimate a year away or in excess of a year. That wouldn't be unusual, especially given that these cases are the biggest that the Planning and Environment Court has ever dealt with, and that was referenced at a recent conference that I attended
Right.
for the Queensland Environmental Law Association.
So this is the biggest case that's
Yes,
come before?
combined together, they are the biggest matters that the P&E Court has ever dealt with, and that's reflected in the hearing timetable, which has it started at 5 weeks. We're now out to 11 weeks.
Okay.
And they're being heard concurrently to try and achieve what efficiencies we can, not just for fees, but also for the timeline for the judge, etc., and to create efficiencies in the hearing of expert evidence, because there are crossovers in the issues.
Sure. I guess I had feedback from I think the magistrate had made some comment about the fact that it was a very challenging environment with conflicting and complex legislation, policies, planning schemes.
Yes.
And
the technical issues in the appeal are also obviously very technical, for lack of a better word. And I think that the report outlines just how many experts the parties have retained each, and we have the least experts because we are trying to create efficiencies, respond to issues that we consider are some of our strengths. The Land Track has 17 experts, Cleanaway has 24 experts, Austin BMI has 21 experts, and we have 10 to 11 experts.
Right. May I ask, when we have the state government there, the Department of State Development, Manufacturing, Infrastructure and Planning,
They're a party to the appeal,
on whose side?
on their own side.
On their own, so it's okay.
Yeah. But they're obviously pushing their agenda.
I've had considerable feedback from residents that they're concerned that they're siding with the waste operators, but that's
I wouldn't be able to remark on that,
Yeah,
but
okay.
that would be inappropriate for me to remark on.
no worries.
Yeah.
Has it been raised there that waste companies are, I guess I'm looking here at the ruling with September last year with BioRecycle, where they made 7.4 million profit and were fined 300,000. Are those kind of things being raised as well about the fact that it's...
Well,
that-
we do have experts in relation to economic need. The costs for the waste operators and their potential profit are not really concerns that council have or will make arguments in respect to in the appeal. We're focused obviously on we are focused on economic need in terms of the capacity of existing landfills to meet the needs of Queensland, Ipswich residents, etc. But we're focusing on environmental and more technical and scientific matters.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, sorry, when will the case wrap up?
Our hearing, I think we're at week 6 of the hearing
Okay.
of
Another 5
11.
weeks. Okay.
So mid-August, I understand. But I will say that their timetable has blown out. It might again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think Councillor Fletcher, did you have a question
No,
for Ms.
sorry, Mayor.
Through-
Just through you, it was probably more of a remark, and I think maybe clarification can be gained here, but the difference between the fine versus the profits made is probably a legislative shortcoming because those fines are bound by legislation. So, yeah.
Thank you.
That's probably all that I was going to say on the matter, not necessarily a question.
Thank you. Any other questions? Ms. Ferris McDonald? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
I move all 3 recommendations together. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Fickner. I open it up for discussion.
Through you, Mayor, and I guess, another huge decision that we're making on budget day. But I think that, and I'm speaking in favour, of course, of these recommendations because it means that we're doing what we said we'd do when we were elected, and it was fight for our residents and for their amenity and make a stand. It's a very expensive stand to make, but it's one that we're prepared to, it's a leap of faith that we're prepared to take here to ensure that our voice is as loud as possible. And I think that, if we can look to the benefits outside of, a potential favourable result, potentially in a year or so's time, is that this sends a very loud and clear message to the state government as to how far we're prepared to pursue these matters, and I think that it helps show our seriousness as a city towards these issues that we're continuously having. And I think that a big part of the judgment being handed down will be that we need to really think about the legislative levers that the state government have that could potentially change to support us better. So, I welcome those conversations as a byproduct of this, of this huge case.
Thank you, Councillor Fichtner. And I guess for me, I look at the fact that, in a way, it makes me sick to my stomach that we're looking at $8 million on legal fees just trying to get people who are waste operators to follow the law. It's not enough for them. They keep wanting to do more and push every boundary. That money should be spent on whether it's community development or infrastructure, or other things that we get, rural roads, other things. It's a lot of money. It's a lot that probably weighs very heavily. That we are looking at up nearly $8 million of ratepayers' money and that burden. But the residents have been very clear that what is happening there can't continue. So we are making that stance, and you can see it's a substantial amount of money. A resident couldn't do this on their own. So we'll step up as a community and as a council, and I'll be supporting this recommendation when it goes to the vote. Any other commentary?
Mayor,
Yes,
I'm also aware that it was pointed out before by Council Officer that Council has, at its cost, provided ongoing support to the unrepresented co-respondents, and that's, I believe, essential that be done.
Thank you. I'll put recommendations A through to C to the vote. Sorry.
Chair, sorry, you identified earlier that there was a D recommendation as well. Would you like to move, would you be best to move all four recommendations?
Oh, sorry. Thank you for that. I appreciate this. My pack was...
Thank you.
So I put them, I guess I recommend A through to D, and I'll just double check with Councillor Fichtner. I said to C. And I'll put A through to D to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And in the room, all 6 councillors have their hands raised. Councillor Kunzelman, how do you vote?
Agreed.
Agreed. It's unanimous and passed. Thank you. We now move on to item 15.6. This is a report concerning Council's financial performance for the period ending the 31st of May 2021, submitted in accordance with Section 204 of the Local Government Regulations 2012. And that recommendation is that the report on Council's financial performance for the period ending 31 of May 2021 be considered and noted by Council. May I ask for the relevant Council Officer to election, please?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Councillors. Jeff Keach, the Acting General Manager of Corporate Services.
Thank you, Mr Keach. I think probably the area that concerns me the most is still the soft capital expenditure.
Yes.
And we have 1 month to go
Yes.
on the reports, or even a week to go.
Sure.
How is that looking?
Sure. Mayor, as you'll recall, there was discussion around the IED capital expenditure in the growth and infrastructure waste, and there was a forecast that would probably likely to be about $3 million under its revised budget that it stood from there. There is obviously the ongoing delays in relation to some of the retail at the CBD side of things, and that'll continue on into next year. So depending on what expenditure happens there, some of that may need to carry over. And obviously in some other areas, just our ICT, we're seeing that we'll probably have a level of underspend. We've delivered our core programs as part of that. There was a provisional amount that was put aside for other programs. So it's not really that we're not delivering the program there, it's just that there is some provisional money allocated that won't be required in that space as well. So there is some of those areas which would be general underspend, but also, just as you're aware, significant work happening in the IED capital delivery at the moment, and obviously where that ends up at 30th of June will depend on where the contractors get to, and we'll assess and manage that with the team over that period.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything here that you'd like to highlight to us in particular?
I guess just following on, Mayor, from the conversation you've just had, it wouldn't be right of me not to mention the risk that it poses to what our financial result will look like as at 30th of June. We're obviously over on legal expenses quite heavily in May as a result of those cases, and I expect to see the same again in June. And obviously, depending on where those costs are at the end of June will impact on where we sit at our end-of-year result. And I've also highlighted the restructuring costs that are likely to come through in June as well. So those are the sort of two main things I'd draw to Council's attention that would actually sort of impact our position at the end of June. The rest is sort of travelling consistently with the trends that we've seen throughout the rest of the financial year.
Okay. Thank you, Mr Keach. Are there any other questions of Mr Keach? No, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I move this recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Fechner. I'll open it up for discussion. There being no discussion, I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And it's 6 of the councillors in the room have voted for it. Councillor Kunzelman, how do you vote?
Yes, agreed.
Yes, okay, that's all 7 unanimous and carried. We're now at item 15.7, which is the report, Audit and Risk Management Committee, number 2021-02 of 19th of May 2021. And this is the report of the Audit and Risk Management Committee of the 19th of May. Would anyone like to speak to the relevant council officer on this report? No? I guess I'll just ask yourself, the CEO, was there anything in there particularly you'd like to highlight?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mayor. Nothing in particular. It was certainly, I noted that the chairperson of the Audit and Risk Management Committee, Mr Rob Jones, it was another robust meeting, as these meetings always are, running to 4 hours, as you'd expect of such an important quarterly meeting. I was comforted by the satisfaction that the external members present did express at what they heard, and also, if I may, I think the councillors present, of course, Councillor Kunzelman, I think was an apology perhaps for that meeting, was she? They expressed comfort that you were there.
The May meeting?
Yes, that's right, you were.
Yes, I was. Yes.
There was matters of the QAO's interim audit over the financial statements, including payroll and ICT, and the Queensland Audit Office and the external members noted that while there was additional issues raised, including significant deficiencies, they were comforted that the officers had noted actions to address those. A number had already been actioned and completed, and that we were doing our very best to complete the remainder by the time the audit was completed later this year. And in relation to procurement, we had a presentation, as the minutes indicate, on the status of the centralisation of procurement here at Council. And our procurement manager, Richard White, delivered that presentation, and the committee noted that they felt more comfortable at the presentation, given the way the risks had been managed in procurement and the progress we'd made in terms of procedures and clear policies and controls around procurement. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. I'd like to move that report. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ireland, thank you. Any discussion? There being no discussion, I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. All 6 councillors in the chambers have raised their hands. Councillor Kunzelman, how do you vote?
Agreed.
Agreed. It's unanimous and carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 16, which is the notices of motion. And the first one is a notice of motion, support of bid by Brisbane Jets for the next NRL team in South East Queensland. And I'll hand over to you, Councillor Tully, to move that motion. And
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'll formally move that. Do I need to read it again? It was rather long at the last meeting. No.
the other thing I would point is that Logan is not part of the catchment area for the bid, but
I
I'll leave
understand
that up
that.
to you.
Yeah. All right. Could I ask if there's a seconder so I could speak to it, please? Thank
Councillor
you.
Johnny, yes.
Yeah. I think it's self-explanatory. This is a motion to write to the Australian Rugby League Commission and to the ARL Chairman, Peter V'landys, supporting the bid by the Brisbane Jets for the next NRL team in South East Queensland. And we are aware that bids have already closed, the formal bids as required. There were 3 bids, one in the called the Brisbane Jets in the west, basically Brisbane and the Western Corridor had combined two bids, one in Easts in Brisbane and Redcliffe, the Dolphins. I think the advantages, obviously, to our community are immense to get the next rugby league team for the Western. I'll just broadly say the Western Corridor. And I've touched on a number of issues, the 111 years of long history of rugby league in Queensland. And the mayor is correct that the issue of Logan is in the broader sort of Western Corridor. People often ask, what is the Western Corridor? The first person who coined that expression some years ago was Bernie Ripoll, who was the federal member for Oxley, and he saw the Western Corridor as describing an amorphous sort of mass somewhere from the western suburbs of Brisbane through Ipswich, parts of Scenic Rim, Lockyer Valley, Somerset, and including Toowoomba. And that's why we're talking about the fastest growing region in Australia, there with Ipswich, of course, the fastest growing city in Queensland. And I believe that if this bid is successful, it will attract a lot of people from the particularly the northern Logan, northern suburbs of Logan City as well. And it's an opportunity that we can't ignore. The history of rugby league, of course, I've said before, you only have to mention the names of Kelly, Beattie, Parcell, Flannery, Langan, Meninga, Beatson, Lockyer and Walters. And we have a very strong competition. What particularly attracts me to it is from July, we've got Channel 9 in Brisbane who are tied with the NRL at the moment, and that may continue. Certainly one of the networks will probably be them into the future. But in Toowoomba, the Win television network, which is currently tied to the Channel 10 network, is reverting back to the Channel 9 network. And we don't want to underestimate in that sort of... I still think of Toowoomba as twin city or sister city in a way where we work together for, there's 2 very large cities and in between an area that is quickly developing. But we've got commercial radio stations in Brisbane, Ipswich and Toowoomba. In Redcliffe, which I personally think is the toughest other bid to outbid, for the Western Corridor bid, they don't have any commercial radio stations actually based in the Redcliffe area. As I say, we've got the two commercial television networks. Don't underestimate, never underestimate, the power of a rural television network servicing Toowoomba and into the Lockyer Valley as well. Plenty of people from that Minden area onwards receive their television stations from Toowoomba. And there are 4 printed daily or weekly newspapers. Toowoomba still has a printed daily newspaper. I think whatever we can do just to officially put on the record, and it's probably getting close to the pointy end of a decision by the NRL, but it's an opportunity for us to say we really want the next NRL team in Ipswich. And I think back to the days of the Bulimba Cup, particularly in the 50s and 60s, you had Toowoomba, Ipswich and Brisbane. They were the heady days of rugby league before television came to the fore, where there were large crowds. We'd go to the North Ipswich Reserve, for the Bulimba Cup games. Rugby league is part and parcel of this city. Rugby league formed in 1908 in Australia, and within a couple of years it was here in Ipswich. And I'm certainly very supportive of of this. Whatever we can do, hopefully we win. And I think if the NRL has got any view towards the future and the expansion of and the amount of growth in this area and the young people who are playing rugby league and the youth of this area and the future of that Brisbane, Ipswich, Toowoomba region, this is the place for them to approve the next team in the NRL. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tully. Does anyone else have anything to say to that motion? As myself, I'll be strongly supporting this, and I'm really delighted that you raised this notice of motion, Councillor Tully. Obviously, I'm very happy to support the Brisbane Jets in their bid. Also very happy to present a letter, as I said before, on the 4th of June, where I wrote to Peter Philandis, the chair of the ARL Commission, highlighting some of the points that you've raised here. And that letter outlines why Council is very supportive of the Jets becoming the NRL's 17th team. And it's just one part of a long list of things that this Council has done to back the Jets. And just to give a bit of a summary of what this Council has been doing to do everything we can to support this bid. We've been backing the bid since 2019. And since then, back then the interim administrator met with the Jets. In February 2020, Ipswich City Council commissioned that options analysis that came to us. In September 2020, the options analysis was discussed with the Jets and other teams. In October 2020, there was an initial meeting with Steve Johnson from the Jets to read the NRL bid. In November 2020, the Jets and Council committed to remaining in contact, and Council began scoping work on the North Ipswich Stadium. In January this year, Council contacted the merged Jets Bombers bid team to reaffirm support. We then began a situational review and an options analysis. Then in February, we provided population demographic data and engagement on catchment growth, data products and other professional advice on NRL ground standards to inform that North Ipswich reserve preparations. In March, the consultation on the situation and options analysis occurred, as well as support for the official bid process through letters of support, data products and demographic analysis. And in June, further work to advance the North Ipswich Stadium Council resolution was brought forward supporting to bringing the NRL games to the city, and Council resolution supported the Brisbane Jets bid. And you're absolutely correct, Councillor Tully, that Ipswich is the historic and spiritual home of rugby league in Queensland. The game has been played in our region since the earliest days of the code. We're also the state and country's foremost nursery of emerging talent. Prodigious talent like Sam Walker, currently starring for the Sydney Roosters, are products of our city. But we've also produced all-time and modern greats like Alfie Langer, the Walters brothers, to name a few. Our city should have a team so players like Sam Walker can stay here and can play here. We know we can support a team now and into the future. We're the fastest growing region in the state. Our population is going to more than double in the next 20 years. We have the talent, the current population, the future growth, the media markets, as you so rightly pointed out, and we have the deep love of the game. And to give people an update too, there is also bipartisan support across all levels of government here in Ipswich. I note the following local members of Parliament and parliamentarians have not only voiced their support, they've also provided letters for the bid as well. So our local federal member for Blair, Shane Newman, Senator Paul Scarr, Jan Howard, the State Member for Ipswich, Lance McCallum MP, the State Member for Bundamba, Charis Mullen MP, State Member for Jordan, Jim Madden MP, State Member for Ipswich West. Also the mayors of Scenic Rim, Lockyer Valley and Toowoomba have also provided letters and are all behind it as well. So agree it's about time the NRL team brought a team to Ipswich. Our community needs and deserves its own team, and I'll be strongly supporting this notice of motion. Any other comments?
Yeah, just through you, Mayor, I want to support Councillor Tully in his notice of motion in today's meeting. I think it's really important. I really enjoyed listening to Councillor Tully's take on the way that the media, might be able to be of assistance in this bid, and it's my hope that these were considerations that were made, in preparation of the bid, because it seems like a very compelling argument that he's made, here, and that you'll obviously reflect in your writing too as well. So I thank Councillor Tully for not only a really strong and passionate and very Ipswich notice of motion, but for the information received within it too.
Thank you, Councillor Fickner. Any other discussion? No? In that case, I'll put the matter to the... Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just very quickly, I'd like to thank you, Mayor, and Councillor Fechner for your comments. I see the media assisting in the bid, but I see more the long-term, the media, the permanent media in that bid as being part and parcel of the ongoing support, obviously to get the bid across the line, but more importantly, in a way, for the ongoing and significant contribution they can have to the development of rugby league and the if we win that bid. Mayor, thank you for the comments about some of the history of that. I recall I was with a picture with in a picture with Steve Johnson at the we call it Lang Park or Suncorp Stadium. The ABC would call it Lang Park still. Back in 2017, outside the Wally Lewis statue there. And this bid has been many years in the making.
Yes.
I think the combination of the two bids, the Brisbane, let's call it the Brisbane and the Ipswich stroke Western Corridor bid, might be the thing that just pulls this off. So fingers crossed, and let's hope that we know very soon that the Western Corridor and Ipswich and the Brisbane Jets are the successful team.
Thank you. With that, I'll put the matter to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. All 6 councillors in the chamber have raised their hand. Councillor Kunzelman, how do you vote?
Agreed.
Agreed. So it's unanimous and carried. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 16.2, which is a notice of motion that council support for federal funding. Actually, I think this has been changed, has it? Or I'll
like to propose an amendment.
Okay. I'll let you read out the notice of motion. This is yours.
So I'd like to propose an amendment to my motion, please. And the amendment being that council write to the federal government seeking grant assistance for the completion of works for stage 3 of Robel Domain.
So is that an amendment or
I'm as the chair, I'm happy to take the amendment. Yep. As the mover of the motion, I think you should be given that courtesy.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, sure. So I bring this motion to council today.
Just a point of order, we do require a seconder before we debate the matter.
Well, isn't this part of her moving?
Yeah, we need a seconder.
Okay. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Tully. Thank you. Please
Thank
proceed.
you. So I bring this motion to council today to ask for a letter of support. A simple letter of support to request funding from the federal government so that council can complete stage 3 of Robel Domain. This simple request does not cost a cent to council. But if we are successful in receiving funds, we'll build a park, but not just any park, a citywide park for all residents of Ipswich. The missing link in a puzzle, a level 1 park designed and created for the entire city, all without council digging into our ratepayers' pockets for a single cent. Robel Domain Stage 3 is the missing link between the Orion Lagoon and the Silver Jubilee Park, currently being delivered by Lendlease. Without Stage 3, there will be no natural connection between two thriving community spaces. No natural connection in an urbanised area full of homes, shops, businesses, people and families. We need to create, where we can, the ability for our residents to leave their cars at home or not purchase one to begin with. This missing piece of the puzzle can achieve just that. Residents of Spring Mountain and beyond could walk through to shops, entertainment, public transport and even employment. Silver Jubilee Park, when complete, will also provide open space and sporting facilities for use for the entire city. Stage 3 gives residents, visitors, locals the opportunity to connect to this park, to get out and about and explore and enjoy the facilities that it will offer. For our community, this park will add acres of space to an already popular attraction, With over 500,000 visitors per year already coming to Rebel Domain, visiting and spending money in our city, it seems irresponsible not to provide an opportunity to increase this attraction and offerings available in this already popular citywide destination. Ipswich City Council's annual plan is made up of 4 key themes: vibrant and growing, safe, inclusive and creative, natural and sustainable, and a trusted and leading organisation. And to me, to be able to provide a simple letter of support to build an active and healthy, inclusive, natural and sustainable open space for our community by seeking financial support from the federal government hits each and every one of these themes without council having to spend a cent of ratepayers' money. A simple request, one letter of support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone like to speak to the relevant council officer? On this? No? No? You don't want to? Could I ask for Mr. Tabulo to come down to the stand, please?
Peter Tabulo, General Manager of Planning and Regulatory Services.
Thank you. I see that Rebel Domain Stage 3 is under our local government infrastructure plan. It's one of the projects there that we normally give consideration under budget.
Correct.
What is council's legal obligation when it comes to park embellishments or public parks or schedule of works for this park?
Excuse me, Mayor and Councillors, the Rebel Domain Stage 3 would be categorised as a citywide linear park under the LGIP, the Local Government Infrastructure Plan. That means it has an intended function to service the whole of the city, and similar to what Councillor Jonick was saying in terms of the demand and its usage. However, being a linear parkland, the LGIP is quite explicit in terms of what is the desired level of service or the elements of infrastructure that are going into that park or into that area. And it's the same across the city, and it's very, very basic to some degree as compared to what the balance of Rebel Stages 1 and 2 have delivered. At this present time, if council was to progress with planning for the parkland in accordance with the LGIP, we would be spending something in the order of $225,000 per hectare of infrastructure contributions to the embellishments in that parkland. And so it's a 2 hectare parkland approximately. So all up, council's planning and delivery would be for assets the equivalent of, let's say, 500,000 thereabouts. So you can see that's the level of baseline infrastructure that would go in there, and that would be things like a series of footpaths to connect Silver Jubilee on the western side of Cinnabanthy Boulevard through to Rebel Domain Stages 1 and 2. It would include seating, it would include other infrastructure, water, bubblers and the like, just to bring it to a standard for that linear connection purpose. Anything above and beyond that is an embellishment that council would have to decide on that it wanted to fund, and fund from the broader ratepayer contribution, not necessarily the developer contributions that have been received from across the state, across the city, I should say. So that's where the dilemma in part comes. At this point in time, we have the baseline infrastructure that council would be planning to deliver on there. There's been a request to put in a significantly higher level of standard for that parkland. That's the choice that council has to make with regard to all parks as such, as to what embellishments above and beyond the standard that it wants to provide. We also have the problem with this, with the situation currently, is that we don't have a plan.
Right.
We don't have even the rudimentary description that I just went through on plan form saying this is where we think this, and this is how we think this parkland should be laid out. So the problem in part that I see in terms of writing to the federal government and seeking assistance is we don't own a plan. Yes, Springfield City Group have presented us with a wonderful concept drawing about it, but that doesn't have endorsement from the council as the vision and what we want to see delivered there. So if we were to be asked from the federal government, well, what's it going to look like? We don't have anything to provide.
Okay.
And so therefore, in my conversations with a number of councillors in the lead up to this motion, I've been stressing that in my mind, I've always felt that it required a conversation amongst ourselves through a budget process to work out when should this program be delivered, whether it's to come forward before anything else, and then to what standard should we be funding the infrastructure on there. And if we are keen to over-embellish the precinct as compared to what the LGIP says, then the question is, well, how is that funded? And that's when you are in a position to say, okay, yes, we've got this vision for this parkland. We consider that the ratepayers can contribute so much, but we would like then either the federal or the state government to come forward and contribute to a better product. But we don't have that at this point in time. We don't have something that council can call its own as to its vision. It's what it wants to see delivered in that Rebel Domain Stage 3.
Right. Do we have a figure of how much we think it would cost?
Well, the figure that's been associated with the documentation from the Springfield City Group is around about that 10 million.
Right.
And that continues the same standard of construction that you see in Rebel Stages 1 and 2. But council, again, hasn't signed off on that. Council hasn't agreed or committed to that level of infrastructure at this point in time. It's not to say that we wouldn't,
Yep.
but that requires a decision from yourselves at some point in time to say, this is where we want to take this parkland above and beyond what the LGIP says it's intended for.
What's the normal council process for that to happen? I know it's on the local government infrastructure plans, on the LGIP.
Yep.
So what's the process?
So like the experience that you've had through this budget process and earlier throughout the year, the Infrastructure and Environment Department would bring forward the priorities of capital works to be spent in parklands across the city, and then you have the opportunity to say, we think this one ranks higher than others, based on the allocation of the budget funds that's against park delivery in the city. Yes, there are some infrastructure credits or infrastructure money that helps to offset the cost, but where does the shortfall come from?
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes, Councillor.
How long has the plan been in council from the developer? Is it only just come in, or it's not been circulated to us to have a look at?
No, it's been in a suite of information that the Springfield City Group gave to council towards the end of last year.
Okay.
But it was never raised through a budget process. It wasn't on the list of council's requests for consideration through the budget process.
Okay.
So
just thinking outside
that's where
the square,
it's been sitting.
if we got the grant and we had some money, but the developer wanted to put the balance in, do we have the ability to do that?
Well, we've got the ability to do a variety of things, but at the end of the day, we don't have a plan. We don't have something that we can say, this is what we want to build.
Can we have a look at what they sent in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
There's no problem about that. But it's got no status within the organisation other than it's a concept drawing that Springfield City Group are championing to have built.
Okay.
Do we have a master area development plan visual of this section of Rebel Domain?
Again, the only document I'm aware of, Councillor Johnick, is the one through the Springfield City Group.
So we haven't approved.
No. No.
I do have another question. So you refer back to the LGIP minimal spend guide. Is that something that we have capped other level 1 parks at in the past?
We would have delivered parks to that standard, but as I've said, it's within council's prerogative to embellish parks to a greater extent. It's a matter of where those additional funds come from for that over-embellishment.
And so I guess we've got a chicken and the egg scenario in that I'm putting up a motion to ask for funding before it's gone through the correct channels in a budget process. But my answer to that is a budget is a living and breathing document that should be fluid at all times. Would we have the capability to achieve concept designs after a letter of support is sent off?
You can, but you're writing a letter, but without some detail, and you're saying we're going to get that to you later on. I just, as you said, I think it's chicken and egg or horse before cart type of arrangement that we just haven't done enough pre-planning and pre-commitment.
So that we've got the conceptual design from Springfield City Group that we have not approved as council,
Yep.
but we could use that as a base for forward planning, could we not?
Well, we can do the cost comparison of that, and yes, it's here's the LGIP standard, here's this standard here. It might be something in between, but we don't know what that's going to cost. We haven't been able to get confirmation from yourselves as to what that parkland should look like. And so for us to be going to a higher level of government saying we'd like to have some funds to assist in the delivery of this park, but we don't know what a park is. We don't know what we really want there.
I'd like to move a foreshadowed motion, which I think might help.
We haven't discussed, but you can move it at
I can
any
move it at
time, I
any time,
guess.
yeah. That council consider the development and delivery of Rebel Domain Stage 3 to ensure that A, any development is planned for and included in the annual budget process, that B, any future development is planned and programmed as part of the annual capital delivery planning process, and C, the need to consider ongoing maintenance and upkeep by Ipswich ratepayers of developer-built assets. I'll put that as a placeholder there, as a foreshadowed motion while we still consider the motion that's currently on the table.
Mayor, I've got some questions.
Yep.
I understand where you're coming from with this, but you mentioned the $10 million that's been referred to. I think if we, correct me if I'm wrong, if this motion were carried, there'd be no doubt that Springfield City Group would use their plan, which they've given us, to lobby the federal government for that expenditure. And $10 million would mean that we wouldn't have to put anything in.
If we were successful, that's right, Councillor Tully.
Yeah.
But as I keep on stressing, at the present time, we haven't cost-checked that concept drawing by Springfield to see whether the 10 million is right. When it goes through a full quantity surveyor's assessment, it might come back and it's now costing 15 million or 20 million. And so then who picks up the shortfall under that scenario. We've got,
Yeah,
we've got a commitment from the federal government,
Yeah,
assuming we get one, for an amount, but we haven't got anything costed.
I'm not sure where the 10 million has come from, but I understand that Springfield City Group might be of the opinion that their plan would be indicative of a
Yes, they are.
$10 million
Yep.
dollar amount. The other issue is on Tuesday of this week, we convened to talk about advocacy and pushing things. We are in a very short time frame leading up to the next election, the next federal election, which could be any time in the next 3 to 6 or 8 months. It'd be very difficult if we were going to tie this to our normal budgetary process to very short time frame. We wouldn't be able to use the lead up to the election for advocacy from the federal government, and obviously. So I'll have more to say along that when we debate the matter.
Any other questions, Mr. Chamberlain? Thank you very much.
Yeah. I'm strongly supportive of this. This doesn't commit the council to any funding at all. I would be surprised if the suggestion that it might go over $10 million, really would come to occur. This is an opportunity to effectively lobby the federal government in the lead up to the election, and possibly even with the opposition, because as we know, lobbying both sides of politics is a very powerful way of, at levels of government such as local government and the state government, to achieve what we want. This is an opportunity to, it's not as though we've got a blank piece of paper. We have a plan which is within council. This is the third stage of that area. It's not as though this is something out of the blue and something that's never been considered. It's the third stage, and I think it's an opportunity for us to get federal funding. And who knows, we might just pull it off. And if they require more information from us, we're certainly in a position to do that. But if there's $10 million in the offing, in my view, a citywide project, level 1, we would be crazy not to avail ourselves of this enormous opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor Tully.
I've got a few thoughts on this as well, and thinking about the contrast of the intention of the first notice of motion put forward, which was a letter of support to the Springfield City Group based on the proposal that they gave council. That was valued at approximately $10 million, and that's where that figure comes from. And then the intent of Councillor Johnick's amended motion on the floor here today for council to spearhead the advocacy on this particular project. I've got a couple of erratic notes, and I just want to go through a few things just to air my thoughts about how I see this working. I kind of see Councillor Johnick's, both her original and her amended motion working together, perhaps in some joint advocacy where we actually make contact with Springfield City Group, and perhaps talk to them about the implications of a $10 million project being funded, in the form of Rebel Domain Stage 3, in that ultimately it's council's land, it's our green space, and we would be in charge of delivering whatever project ends up being agreed upon by this council on that land. Is $10 million excessive? Probably, because it will end up costing us in the long run in asset rehabilitation. However, we have been speaking, and it's at the forefront of all of the councillors' minds this week, about advocacy and how we effectively lobby other levels of government. And to Councillor Tully's point, And I think to the point of the original notice of motion provided today, we have a strong ally potentially in Springfield City Group in getting something happening down in Rebel Domain Stage 3. The implications of obviously endorsing and supporting Councillor Johnnick's notice of motion today triggers a few things from Council's perspective that we need to consider and have laid on the table today. It's that the prioritisation of Rebel Domain Stage 3 in the LGIP will be affected by this because it's a commitment, particularly with the strong support of Councillor Tully, by the Division 2 councillors to have that as a focus for them. I reflect on a petition that was tabled at Council earlier this year with regards to a park that's near and dear to mine and Councillor Doyle's heart, and how we fought, to lobby the state government to do so. And then it kind of fell by the wayside within budget discussions because of the nature of the work that was being done there and the kind of grant money that was available. We as a council decided to apply elsewhere. And I don't know if everyone around the table remembers, but Jim Madden and the community of Leichhardt 1 Mile were spearheading that at the time. Thinking of the contrast between the petition and the advocacy and inevitable council decision, to allocate those funds elsewhere, I think that there is merit in partnering with the Springfield City Group on this. So, I would like to. I'm trying to work out what my potential variation to Councillor Johnnick's notice of motion would be, but And we cannot deny the efficacy of Springfield City Group as some of the best lobbyists and advocates for this city, and indeed, very professional and slick and regarded internationally. Let's be honest about that. So if we truly believe in reprioritising Rebel Domain Stage 3, I don't believe in spending $10 million on it, and I absolutely don't. But I think that if we met with Springfield City Group, and from our perspective, we showed them what the LGIP requirements are, and that $500,000, that would be spent there, and to, temper the expectation that they have on the delivery. Noting that the only thing they've presented us is very high level. And, the genesis of this very notice of motion comes from those early concept designs provided by Springfield City Group. But myself as a councillor, feeling a little bit left out of that process, I would love to actually meet with them to say, thank you for your interest. Based on the conversations and some of the information provided by Councillor Johnnick here today, it is a really important link for Division 2. It's a really important park, and if that's reprioritised as one of the Division 2 priorities based on active transport, access, to the shopping centre, unlocking, a huge green corridor, within the division, I think has merit. And I think that, we really should be considering the reprioritisation of Rebel Domain Stage 3 is something that's important. So I get the sentiment of Councillor Johnnick and Councillor Tully. I wouldn't be supportive, Councillor Johnnick, of a $10 million project, but realistically, I know the accountant in you doesn't either in terms of asset rehabilitation moving forward, but in terms of partnering with an advocate coming into a federal election, as Councillor Tully said, I do see the merit in that. So, I seek to vary the motion to actually have a sit-down conversation with the Springfield City Group to talk through these. To talk through all of the matters that were raised in today's meeting, and any others from the relevant departments of council, to say, look, if this is a priority, and there is a groundswell of support politically on other levels, and I can't speak to that, but if there is and there is an opportunity, I get the sentiment of your notice of motion that you want to grab that with both hands. It's just about how do we go about it as reasonable people that are the decision makers of this city, and I think there is a huge opportunity to be had if we rework this, if you're amenable to do so, to invite Springfield City Group to join us at their earliest convenience in the new administration building for a workshop to think about what that might look like for you. And in doing so, you know, they could help with supporting documentation for a grant application to the federal government. That's just the thoughts that I've had over the course of the weekend after reading this notice of motion, and indeed throughout the course of the conversation today. I don't know if anyone has anything else to add to that, or does anyone want
Thank
to
you,
legitimise?
Councillor Fechner. And I note that I am an accountant, so I do understand obligations from a balance sheet perspective of maintenance and rehabilitation on an asset. But I'm not with my crystal ball today, so I don't know what the outcome of this development will be. However, there is room for infrastructure to be built there on a sustainable nature. There could be a committee formed that takes various stakeholders on board in the design process for this to be a sustainable infrastructure build. Who knows? I'm just asking for timely support, given the political landscape and the timing of the federal election, the way that it stands, for this to be raised and put forward, because it's an opportunity that's come my way, and I haven't taken this lightly. I've done my due diligence. I've done my forethought. I've discussed this matter with representatives of government on all levels, both past and present, and the consensus is from those representatives that did care for this particular division, that this is an opportunity that can't be missed. A word of advice I received from one former local government representative of this region was this: opportunities will arise through our term in council from various sources, and we must be open to receive benefits when presented that champion our community. Our decisions must be fluid in all matters for our city. So I don't think that I'm going to be alone in a matter like this in the rest of our term here. Other matters like this for other divisional councillors will arrive at your doorstep in the future. My request for a simple letter, it might be the chicken or the egg, is timed appropriately, and it's all that I ask.
Thank you, Councillor Johnnick. This has been one I've put a lot of thought into, and we've had discussions, and I look at weighing up good governance, knowing that we're dealing with not a plan but a picture. It's not a, let's be quite clear, it is a picture. There's no plan. Look at the fact that we've been through a process for what our regionally significant projects are, and we've had an agreement that this is how we would advocate. I also weigh up on what you're saying about opportunity as well, and the cycle when we were having discussions earlier this week about advocacy, and we discussed our 6 regionally significant projects, and we also looked at the fact that what could $10 million get us from the federal government. If there was $10 million on the table from the government, let's face it, it's not an endless bucket of money. If there's money to be spent here, I must admit I would certainly prioritise that final business case for the second bridge crossing. I think for the economic development, that's $2.5 million. We require another $1 million for the Ipswich to Springfield train line. We've got a multitude of other things that $10 million could be spent on that I think would be
I'm not asking in my motion for 10 million.
That is what Springfield City Group have asked for.
Their estimate is 10 million based on their picture.
Yes. So I guess that weighs on me heavily that that we have good governance processes in place for a reason. I think that foreshadowed motion, it does go to the fact that we would go through a proper process for it, rather than potentially having, you might say opportunity other, it could be hijacked by a property developer on the other hand. I just want to make sure that we're following proper processes and that everything is considered rather than just looking at a picture and making a decision whether we send a letter to the federal government on something that there are no designs on or anything like that. So that's what's, I guess, weighing on my mind, and that's why I've put forward that foreshadowed motion to find a way forward using good governance principles.
I know I'd be speaking out of order, and this is dragging on. However, I'm sitting on the fence between the opportunity of, of potential grant money coming into the city, and and funding a really important connection of Rebel Domain, and also the governance of it. I guess it's really important what this letter looks like. If we want to get into the detail of it, it doesn't have to say that we support a $10 million project either. That council write to the federal government seeking grant assistance to the completion of works for stage 3 of Rebel Domain. What does that letter presently look like? There's like I'm unsure of what will be placed in there. Based on today's discussions, it's very difficult without that direction. Or consultation with the Springfield City Group, or consultation, with council officers to write that. Councillor Johnick, just a question for you. Have you cast your mind to what that letter of support might say, or some of, because there's this, very obvious $10 million that's mentioned in the notice of motion, but you're not necessarily seeking $10 million with your amended motion, because it's not really supporting the Springfield City Groups. We're almost inviting them to come on, as an advocate for the potential funding of it, and not necessarily $10 million. So we could be quite specific in that letter of support. I personally would like to hear the thoughts of Springfield City Group. I have not been contacted by them, nor have I reached out to them to ask, what their thoughts around potentially tempering their expectation in terms of what goes there are either. I think that there's lots of variables that play into this. I mean, the letter could be innocuous and just ask for general support within the LGIP standard or above, but until we know specifically what's going to be written in that letter, I'm unsure of what exactly we're agreeing to here today. And to Mr. Tabulo's point, it's difficult to, without a vision to piece together, considering we hear time and time again that business cases are everything when we're lobbying governments for project money. Will they fund something that doesn't exist? Or do we need to bring Springfield City Group in and potentially use their resources to think about what that could potentially be within the realms of something that the city can afford long term?
If they, I can't answer if they'll fund something that doesn't have a business plan behind it. I'm just merely asking to support the grant application, really, and get behind another key stakeholder in our city. Because, what has been delivered so far, everyone is enjoying. So I'm assuming that they've got that right a mix of advocacy and wisdom in delivering and designing parks for the greater community. I understand where you want to have more open discussions for the specifics of what goes into that letter. So I guess I welcome that. So if that could be in addition to my motion, that when we when we draft the letter, then we are doing so upon meeting with Springfield City Group. Is that something that would satisfy?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Tully, in terms of advocacy for the federal election, you know, we're coming close to the start of July. How long do you think we have to get things together here? Because, you know, to Councillor Johnick's point, I would like to see this workshopped by the entire council, you know, to really formulate what would go in a letter like that. To have further discussions around that, I think, would be quite conducive to, you know, a good outcome in this regard. But noting time sensitivities, what are your thoughts through the Mayor to you, Councillor Tully?
Yeah, thank you. I think 3 to 4 months before an election is a real possibility, and we've discussed that, and I think most people would think that's a realistic. But to get this on the road, to get this show on the road, you don't be leaving it until 2 weeks before the election.
No.
I think there might be some merit in being able to have more detail and you know, a concentrated view in our discussions with Springfield City Group. I'm attracted to this because it doesn't mention an amount, but I think it sets the tone that we are seeking a significant grant, and if we can get elected members in this area to support this, there's nothing to stop us immediately from now on having some more detailed discussions with SCG.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd clarify, because Springfield City Group have written to me, they are asking for $10 million. So whatever letter we write as support for the grant, that's how much they're asking the federal government. That's certainly what they've written to me, saying that they would be. May I ask Mr Tabiel another question, please? What is the normal process for any property? If there's a project on the LGIP, the Local Government Infrastructure Plan, what is the process for a property developer to raise it and get it prioritised and get the work underway? What's that process?
Mayor, I suppose this situation is different from one perspective with the developer involvement, from the point of view that this is our land. It's council's land that's been dedicated to council for park purposes. So for all intents and purposes, the developer who's done the development around the park has got no standing or status and say in what we do with our park whatsoever. To your question, it might vary when the park is still under the ownership, or the land intended to be park is still under the ownership of the developer, and they are developing it and building it as part of their estate, and then getting some form of credit going forward as a result of the infrastructure that they're providing on our behalf. But this land has been dedicated to us. We are the masters of our destiny on this piece of land. Yes, good relationships would mean that we can talk to Springfield and can talk to anyone about what goes on in that parkland. But at the end of the day, it's up to us to determine what the look and feel of that parkland is. And I'll send you the concept plans that have been provided to us, but they've got, as I said, they've got no standing, and it's not our vision. From the comments that the councils have made later on this afternoon, you're still undecided about what your vision is, about whether you want it to be the basic LGIP or whether you want it to be sustainable and the like. We haven't sat down and as an organisation determined what we want that to be, and that's the critical element for me in this equation. At the end of the day, writing a letter to the Commonwealth is fine. It's straight direction of council if that's the will for it to happen. but there's nothing behind it to demonstrate what we are seeking there. And sorry if I'm repeating myself, but that to me is the fundamental aspect that we're missing here. We just don't have that buy-in as to what we want to see on that parkland, which is our parkland.
And so, sorry, Mr. Tabulo, how long would it take for us to develop what we want to see on our parkland?
You'd have to think that it would be a good 3 to 6 months. By the time we went out, procured the services of landscape architects, brought them in, had the conversations with yourself about options. It's not a quick process. That's why it's a budget. It's a due budget consideration process.
Have all infrastructure projects been through the budget process? Has council applied for grants like this or letters of support like this in the past for different projects? That's
Yes.
thrown it out of whack?
Absolutely. Well, again, here's the uniqueness about this scenario. There's no grant funding program that we're aware of that's being used. You would have experienced over the last 12 months in the COVID crisis that each level of government threw out programs, nominated programs, where local governments could allocate projects to and get funding for it. There's no grant program here.
So I've had discussions with members of the federal government in relation to this, and that's why I've put this up today. So I understand that it's not cut and dry and under any specific grant available right now, but the fact that I've had that connection, I've made that connection that we spoke to about in our meeting about advocacy, is what I'm doing right now. And so when you make a master plan, do no changes happen after that? It's just set in stone.
No, changes happen constantly over time, depending on.
I think we've seen that with the admin building.
Absolutely.
Am I not right and
Absolutely.
correct in saying that a lot of stuff was changed a fair way into the project?
But through a process by where we've started with an agreed vision as to what we want to see, and then changed over time based on funding resources, competing demands and the like.
But what if there was money available, Mr. Tabulo, and then we had to flip it around and do things a little bit differently? So we don't have to do the embellishment of this park ourselves.
And that would be tremendous, but as I keep on saying, we don't have a plan. And so if we're lucky enough and successful enough and we're given some money, what conditions are attached to that? Does it have to be spent in a certain period of time? Construction have to start in a certain period of time? We don't know, and we're not ready at this point in time to be able to commit to delivering it as part of the capital program for this year, or it's outsourced to contractors or other means of procurement and delivery. All that has to be thought through.
And I guess that this is not what I'm asking for at the end of the day. Again, I don't know what the outcomes of this will be. We might not get any funding at all. But if the outcomes or the limitations that are applied to the funding, if we do receive it, don't fit our agenda, then, it is what it is. But I guess you've got to ask.
But the last thing we want to do, we've been criticised in the past for giving back money, not being able to spend grant money. So unless you'd hate to be put in that situation.
So what type of timeframes are giving around grant money for infrastructure builds in your experience?
It depends on the grant program.
Yep.
Say
community infrastructure.
It would all vary, Councillor Johnny, really depending on what the intent of the program is. In the COVID world, the concept has been about getting projects shovel ready on the ground, creating jobs to fill in a gap with respect to the downturn in the economy. Others don't necessarily have that imperative to them and could be 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, whatever it might be. They vary, depends on what the purpose of the grant is for.
So you could say that if it wasn't under COVID circumstances, then a grant of this nature might give us 12 to 24 months to deliver on.
Could do.
And that would not work within our...
It may. Again, it's the priority of what resources it's going to consume before others.
But if we get the funding, would that funding not fund the resources?
There's still project management, all those things that go with grant projects to be considered.
Okay. And so that would cost us?
Well, it's factored into the grant amount.
So it would be part of the funding that we receive?
Again,
so this is I'm asking for a letter of support at a time appropriate based on conversations I've had and I've advocated for. And so this is my job as a councillor
Absolutely.
to stand here and speak on behalf of my community and actually speak on behalf of everyone's community because it's a citywide park where I've seen an opportunity. And so I can't answer every single question that might come up down the track on what might or might not occur. But given your response in grants received have usually 12 to 24 months of time to deliver on, I don't think that that's unreasonable.
and it's not under normal circumstances, but we don't know what the conditions or what the conditions that the grant might come with.
Will we find out if we don't send the letter?
I don't know how the Commonwealth is going to respond when it's not a dedicated grant program that's been announced for the broader community and other local governments to access this pool of money. So without that, we're all in the dark about its terms and conditions, what it's trying to achieve, how much we can ask for. You know, they're not normally open cheques, and even in the experience of the COVID round, for a local government to get $10 million on a particular project, I'd be pretty surprised if that occurred anywhere, because of the limited availability of money. So
I guess I'm just asking for $1 in a postage stamp and consensus to send a letter, and if it goes nowhere, then so be it.
Mayor, can I just...
Any other questions of Mr Tabulo?
Yeah.
Yep.
I think the difference in this case is that the advocacy in the lead up to the election, often undertakings are given. For example, the AFL Stadium, that's been promised by several governments. It's not part of the normal grants program, which we can identify and know about. It's often what you might call election grants, where the government and or the opposition will promise money, and then depending upon which one's elected, they then fashion, in compliance with their undertaking or election promise, they then fashion that into a program. So I think we've got plenty of time between now and 6 months or more after the election, if it's promised, to fashion the detail.
Do you have a question for Mr Tabulo?
Oh, well, I was just asking perhaps if he agrees with that or not.
Okay.
yeah, it's a reasonable scenario, Councillor Tully.
Thank you.
We've heard in the past experiences where the Commonwealth has given grants for particular projects in an election cycle.
Or every election cycle, I think.
But in this environment, as an officer of this council, I'm obliged to commit to these are the methodologies that we work with. And there's nothing wrong with writing a letter of endorsement, but it's normally once we have a concept plan in place and an understanding of how much it's going to cost, and then seeking any shortfalls or contributions to achieving that outcome, which we just don't have at this present time.
Any other questions, Mr Tabulo? No, thank you very much for coming back. If we're talking about experience, I've run, I'm the only person here in this room that's run as a candidate in a federal election out here. I've done that twice. I've also been a campaign manager, and I was also on state executive of a political party for over 3 years. It'd be my experience here, and speaking with federal parliamentarians out here, that there's usually a dollar amount for a federal electorate. If it is an electoral grant, such as Councillor Tully highlighted, that it could be an electoral grant, it could be an existing grant program, we don't know. If it is an electoral grant, there will be a capped dollar amount, and I guess that's where I come to. If there was 10 million on the table, and I know you took out $1 for a stamp, Deputy Mayor, but Springfield City Group have said it's a $10 million park, and that's what they'll be asking for. And I look at the needs for the greater city of what else could we do with $10 million of federal money. And I also come back to those good governance principles that this council needs to follow as well. But I understand your passion for it, and I understand you standing up for residents in Division 2, and I think I've said that to you in the past, so I understand where you're coming from.
Mayor, if I may, we've had lengthy discussion, which is good for the decisioning process. I absolutely applaud the prospect of taking advantage of opportunity when it presents. However, I'm also extremely adverse to departing from proper due process in terms of experienced council officers' advice. So that's just wanted to explain where my mind is sitting in terms of decisioning in terms of this matter.
If there's no other note in the time frame, I'll leave the reply to Councillor Johnick as the person who's...
I'm just going to propose a variation, if I may.
Okay, Councillor Fickner.
Not that Councillor Johnick or Tully have to agree to it.
Yes.
Keep Councillor Johnick's words, so after stage 3 of Rebel Domain, after Council has had time to formally workshop an agreed position on the vision for stage 3 Rebel Domain.
Is there a time frame for that visioning?
Just noting how invested we all are with this, I would like to have these conversations while Councillor Madsen and Councillor Doyle are able to participate, and considering it might be nice to be able to invite Councillor Kunzelman to meet physically and to workshop this a bit further. I propose this variation because I am grappling with the governance of this, but I think that, if we do take the time to formally workshop an agreed position as a council, then that's, a very transparent and an honest thing to do.
Thank you. Agreed.
So that's the variation put forward here by Councillor Fickner, is that council write to the federal government seeking grant assistance for the completion of works for stage 3 of Rebel Domain after council has had time to formally workshop an agreed position on the vision for stage 3 of Rebel Domain. I'll check with the mover if that is a variation that is acceptable to her. The mover, is that acceptable to you? Oh, sorry, the seconder, is that acceptable?
Yes, I accept that.
Okay. Would anyone like to have any other discussions? Otherwise, I think we move to the vote on that. Yep. All those in favour of this, the variation motion, put your hand up, please. In the room, all 6 councillors have raised their hand. Councillor Kunzel, may I ask you, are you supporting this as well or not?
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
Yes.
So it's unanimous for 7, all sorts of council, and it's passed. Thank you. the last motion for the day. Down to 17, questions on notice, and there are none. I have invited Councillor Tully to make a few remarks. This will be the very last council meeting in this council chambers. And as the person that has spent more time in here and probably has more stories than anyone else in this room, I've invited Councillor Tully to provide closing comments and anecdote or whatever he would like, if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I think most of the best stories I can't speak about until I retire. But yeah, it's a little bit emotional. When I was first elected in 1979, council was meeting in what was known as the Commonwealth Bank building at the corner of Brisbane Street, and it wasn't even the mall there, it was Nicholas Street up on the top floor. It was a fairly Spartan sort of building. We were part-time councillors at the time. We'd meet in the evenings. I remember Frank Warwick, who from Channel 7, who passed away recently, once he did the news from the council chambers for Channel 7, live from up there. When we moved here in 1985, it was a big deal. We had to get special permission from the state government, for example, out the front here into South Street to build over the road reserve. So it was a long project for council to find its own home for the building, which has served the city since 1985. In those days, Joe Bielka-Peterson was the Premier. Russ Hinds was the Minister for Local Government and Main Roads. And I will say today, and I don't say this publicly very often, but on both sides of politics, I would rate Russ Hinds as the best, on one side of politics, as the best local government minister that I've seen. He was the chairman of the Albert Shire for a number of years, understood local government and worked with local government very strongly. On the other side of politics, I think Tom Burns was probably the best local government minister. And just one example of that was when he championed the compulsory fencing of pools in Queensland. And that might seem like nothing now, but that was one of the biggest fights that he had with many property owners in the state. So they're the two who stand out to me. When we first started here in 1985, as I said, nighttime meetings continued. We were part-time councillors. We were paid $80 a week as councillors. The first mayor at the time who'd been elected in 1979 was Des Freeman. Then Dave Underwood became the mayor, and the third mayor after that was John Nugent. That was after the amalgamation of both councils in 1995. There's lots of memories and lots of nostalgia here. We even had august meetings of the Australian Nuclear Free Zone Secretariat, which was a very important organisation over the years. There was a lot of wheeling and dealing done, mainly in the corridors of power here rather than in the council chamber. There's just one comment, probably the one I always remember, and there's many, many comments, but I remember Norm Kruger, who was the deputy mayor at one stage. He was a brilliant orator, and it was a time through some of the turmoil in this council. And he said that, I can quote him exactly, he said, some people get into politics to help people. He's talking about himself, I got into politics to destroy people. So, and I guess not many people in politics would say that, but Norm Kruger did. That was in the days before council meetings were televised or committee meetings were. There's a lot that could go into a book, a lot that you'd want to leave out. But, after from 1985 on till now, I think we're moving, and I had the opportunity to go down and see almost the finished product today. This is a fine testament to, to two things. One, this building, which was pretty extraordinary, and I think we are very lucky as a community and as a council to be able to partner with the Ipswich Hospital to have a buyer. Sometimes that's not possible, and you're stuck with a particularly purposed sort of building, and you've got a liability rather than an asset on your hands. So, with those just few short words, and I'm sure if Councillor Fechner had been here in those years, he would be featuring very strongly in my book for various reasons, which I won't go into today. But no, it's been an opportunity. It's been a journey over, both my life, personal life, and my political life has been over a number of generations, and every council's different. Everyone's got their various personalities and interests, and I suppose today we've seen democracy in action, and I hope that continues in the new building. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Teller. Thank you. On that, thank you so much, Councillor Teller. I really appreciate that. And I'll close the very last council meeting in these council chambers at 4:27.